You worthless. Damn it, the word hangs in the opulent, cavernous living room. I stand there, my cheek burning, a fiery handprint blooming on my skin. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, her face is a mask of fury, her perfectly manicured nails digging into her own palms. Look what you've done. Ever since you set foot in this house, you pathetic, bad luck charm, everything has turned to ash. Everything. I don't say a word. What is there to say? My silence seems to infuriate her even more. She takes a step forward, her voice dropping to a raw, ragged whisper that is somehow more terrifying than her screams. I should have left you to rot in that dead-end town. I should have known. The psychic warned me about a shadow that could follow the light. And you are the goddamn shadow, Lucy. You are the ruin of this family. My hands tremble. I can feel a single, hot tear trace a path through the fire on my cheek. Ruin? Have you ever been called that? Not just a mistake or a disappointment, but the actual, living embodiment of destruction? It's a strange, hollow feeling, as if your own soul has been evicted from your body, and all that's left is the label someone else has slapped on you. But it didn't start like this. Nothing ever does. It didn't start with shattered crystal and a burning cheek. It started with a promise. A goodbye on a cold Pennsylvania morning, the air so crisp it felt like breathing tiny needles of glass. Matthew held me, his chin resting on the top of my head. I could feel the heavy, rhythmic thump of his heart against my ear, a drumbeat counting down our final seconds. In a few moments, the Greyhound bus would pull up, its brakes hissing like a final, mournful sigh, and it would take him away from me, away from Havenwood, our small, forgotten town, and toward a life of prestige and purpose in medical school. 4 years. I pressed myself deeper into the worn fabric of his coat, trying to memorize the scent of him, faintly of coffee, clean laundry, and the boundless, optimistic future that was waiting for him. My eyes were swollen shut from a night of crying. There were no tears left to fall, just a raw, aching emptiness. Today, my boyfriend was leaving to become a doctor. He was leaving for 4 years, and I knew, with the kind of certainty that settles deep in your bones, that I would miss him with every breath I took for every one of those days. He gently pulled away. On the deserted street at the edge of town, with the sun just beginning to bleed across the horizon, he held my face in his hands. One hand held my chin, the other tucked a stray strand of my long hair behind my ear. He looked at me, his gaze so intense it felt like he was trying to photograph my soul. You have to take care of yourself. You hear me? He whispered, his voice thick. No more skipping meals to finish an extra shift at the diner. Promise me, Lucy. You have to wait for me. Just a few years. I'll come back for you. I listened to his words, my hands twisting the hem of my thin jacket. A lump formed in my throat, tight and painful. I could only nod, looking up at him. You too, I managed to choke out. Take care of yourself. It gets cold up there, I hear. Remember to wear a scarf. I will. In the distance, the bus rumbled into view. Matthew immediately pulled me close again, his lips pressing a final, lingering kiss onto my forehead. In that moment, his parents called his name from their parked car. I watched, my heart fracturing, as he turned away. He gave me one last look, a look that promised everything. Before climbing aboard, I raised a hand to wave goodbye, and that's when the tears I thought were gone found their way back, tracing cold paths down my cheeks. The bus disappeared, taking Matthew to the airport and to his new life, and I was left behind, turning my worn-out sneakers back towards the path that led home. home. The word felt too grand for our little shack. My dad was long gone, leaving just me and my mom in a drafty, two-room house that shuddered every time the wind blew. Mom's sickness was a constant, unwelcome guest. A chronic lung condition that flared up without warning, leaving her weak and breathless. The medical bills were a mountain we could never hope to climb. Every penny I earned from my waitressing job at the town's only diner went to keeping us afloat and paying for the inhalers and prescriptions that kept her alive. It was never enough. I worked until my feet were numb and my bones ached, never daring to take a day off, but we were still sinking. The diner where I worked was owned by Laura, Matthew's mother. It was there, between slinging burgers and refilling coffee cups, that Matthew and I fell in love. We had a plan, a simple, beautiful plan. Next year, he was going to tell his parents about us, officially. We'd get engaged, he'd finish school, and we'd build a life together. But plans are fragile things. Matthew's father decided he needed to attend a more prestigious, out-of-state university to secure a better residency. It was an opportunity he couldn't refuse, and so, our love story was put on hold, a casualty of ambition and a brighter future. His future, as I approached our little house, nestled amongst the tired-looking pine trees. I slapped my cheeks a couple of times, trying to bring some color back, to wipe away the evidence of my grief. I couldn't let Mom see me like this. She worried enough as it was, but as I reached the door, I froze. I could hear voices inside. A visitor, sitting at our small, wobbly kitchen table, was my mother, Sarah. Her face was etched with worry. Her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. Across from her sat Maria, a woman from our town who'd moved to the city years ago and now worked as a housekeeper for a wealthy family. And I'm telling you, Sarah, they're looking for a very specific type of girl for their son, Maria was saying, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. They had a reading. A psychic told them they need a girl born in the year of the dragon to change their son's luck. I thought of your Lucy right away. She's a dragon, isn't she? My mother's voice was frail. But would a family like that really want my Lucy? We have nothing. She's a good girl, but she's used to a hard life. I'd be afraid she wouldn't know how to act, that they'd be cruel to her. Oh, stop that. Maria waved a dismissive hand. Lucy is kind. She's respectful. She knows her place. Who wouldn't love a girl like that? Look, I'm only telling you because I think it's a golden opportunity. Your daughter gets a stable life, and you wouldn't have to worry anymore. They're a good family, powerful. Think about it. I have to get back for my shift, but you talk to Lucy. I'll be back next week for your answer. Thank you, Maria. I'll talk to her. Maria stood up and headed for the door. I quickly pressed myself against the thin wall of the house, hiding in the shadows until she was gone. I'd heard everything. A cold dread washed over me, followed by a wave of bitter sadness. We were poor. If Mom married me off to a rich family, she wouldn't have to worry about the next medical bill. They'd likely give us money, a dowry, a gift, whatever they called it, enough to ensure she had the care she needed. I was her daughter. If she asked this of me, how could I refuse? The weight of filial duty, of love for my ailing mother, settled on my shoulders like a physical thing. But what about Matthew? What about the warmth of his hand in mine just hours ago? The promise whispered on the cold morning air. Duty versus love. My heart felt like it was being torn in two. A sob escaped my lips, a small, choked sound. From inside, my mother's voice called out, weak but sharp. Lucy, Is that you, honey? Why are you crying? Wiping my eyes, I stepped inside. Under the dim glow of the single bare bulb, my tears must have looked like diamonds on my cheeks. What is it, sweetheart? She asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Did someone give you a hard time at work today? I shook my head. I looked at my mother, really looked at her. The illness had stolen the light from her eyes and carved lines of pain onto her face. She looked so fragile, so tired. Mom, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I heard you and Maria talking. I think you should say yes. Her eyes widened in alarm. She reached out, her hand cool and dry, and stroked my hair. Her voice was a low, pained murmur. Lucy, no. We may be poor, but I will never sell my daughter for money. Never. She paused, her gaze drifting to the stack of unpaid bills on the counter. Her shoulders slumped. But I look at you. You've worked so hard for me, for us. You don't have nice clothes. You never go out with friends. You have nothing for yourself. Maria says they are a good family, that this is about fate, astrology, a perfect match for their son. They believe it will bring them good fortune. If I knew they would treasure you, if I knew you'd be safe. She looked me in the eye, her own filling with tears. But Lucy, if you don't want this, I will tell her no. We'll find another way. I leaned into her, resting my head on her chest, listening to the shallow, rattling sound of her breathing. Matthew was gone for so long, 4 years, a lifetime. And my mother, she was like a candle flame flickering in a storm. Without money for her medicine, that flame could be extinguished at any moment. What good would Matthew's love be then, if I had it but had lost my mother? Besides, we were young. He was going to a new world, full of new people, new experiences. Who was to say he would stay faithful? Who was to say time and distance wouldn't erode his promises? I squeezed my eyes shut, burying the fledgling hope of my first love deep in a corner of my heart. I locked it away. It's okay, Mom, I said, my voice muffled against her chest, trying to sound stronger than I felt. Tell Maria, yes, I agree to it, as long as they'll be kind to me, and as long as I know you'll be taken care of for the rest of your life. That will be my happiness. In a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of Philadelphia, Maria was polishing a silver picture frame with a soft cloth. The morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Eleanor, the matriarch of the house, descended the grand staircase, her silk robe whispering against the marble steps. "Good morning, Maria," she said, her voice crisp and authoritative. "Good morning, Mrs. Vance," Maria replied, turning. "You're up early." Eleanor paused, her gaze sweeping over the immaculate living room before settling on Maria. A flicker of anxiety crossed her features. "Well, did you have any luck on your trip home?" Maria's face broke into a knowing smile. She set the frame down. "I did, just as you asked. I found a girl in my old hometown, born in 1992, the year of the dragon." A wave of palpable relief washed over Eleanor. Her shoulders, which had been tense and high, relaxed an inch. "Tell me about her." "Her name is Lucy. She's 20 years old. A good girl, Mrs. Vance. Very kind, very respectful, hard-working. It's just her and her mother, who is quite ill. They don't have much." Eleanor waved a dismissive hand, a gesture that brushed away the entire concept of poverty as if it were a speck of lint on her sleeve. "That's irrelevant. What matters is her character and her compatibility. Is she obedient? Does she understand her place?" "She is the most dutiful daughter I have ever seen," Maria said with conviction. "She would do anything for her mother, Excellent. Eleanor's eyes gleamed with triumph. She had found the key, the solution to her problem, son. We will, of course, provide a generous gift to help with her mother's medical care. But I need you to be certain, Maria, absolutely certain about her birth year. There can be no mistakes. I'm certain, Mrs. Vance. I've known her family my whole life. She's a dragon, through and through. Good, very good. Eleanor's mind was already racing. Then it settled. We'll offer them, to say, $20,000, a gift, to ensure the mother is comfortable. And this weekend, you and I will drive down there to make the formal proposal. Of course, Mrs. Vance. Whenever you are ready. Just then, a figure appeared at the top of the stairs. Julian. He was dressed in expensive athletic shorts and a t-shirt, his hair a mess from sleep, a yawn stretching his handsome face. Mom, what are you two whispering about down there? He called out, his voice thick with sleep. Tell Maria to get breakfast started. I'm meeting the guys at the club in an hour. Eleanor's face tightened. She looked at her son, her creation, and all she saw was a disappointment. A handsome, charming, utterly aimless disappointment. You're always running off with those friends of yours, she said, her tone sharp. You never lift a finger to help with the family business. The way you're going, by the time your father and I are gone, this entire fortune will have vanished. Julian trudged down the stairs, rolling his eyes. Oh my God, not this again. It's 8 a.m. Can we not do the "you're a failure" speech before I've had coffee? You and Dad are perfectly healthy. You're not dying anytime soon, so relax. That's not the point, Julian. It's time you settled down. It's time you took a wife. He stopped dead at the bottom of the stairs and laughed. A short, incredulous bark. A wife? Are you serious? Mom, look around. It's the 21st century. I'm young. I'm having fun. Marriage is the last thing on my mind. A heavy footstep echoed from the hallway. Richard, his father, emerged, holding a newspaper. He looked tired, his face a testament to years of mediating these same arguments. What is all this shouting so early in the morning? He asked, his voice weary. He glanced at Maria. Maria, please just get breakfast on the table. I need to get to the office. Yes, Mr. Vance. Richard then turned his gaze from his wife to his son. Can the two of you not go one morning without turning this house into a war zone? Your son, Eleanor said, her voice dripping with indignation, thinks he can just drift through life without a single responsibility. I told him it's time he got married, and he laughed at me. Richard's eyes narrowed slightly. Get married? To whom? Did you find someone? Eleanor's mood shifted instantly. A triumphant smile played on her lips. Yes, Maria found her. A perfect match. She's a good, simple girl. And Richard, she's a dragon. 5 years younger than Julian. A perfect astrological pairing. Just like the psychic said. Once they're married, his fortunes will turn. He'll finally have some stability, some luck. Richard nodded slowly, a look of genuine satisfaction on his face. Julian stared at them both, his mouth agape. You have got to be kidding me, he finally sputtered. You two are actually going through with this superstitious nonsense. I'm not some pawn in your cosmic game. I'm a person. I'll marry someone I love when I'm ready. Forget it. I've lost my appetite. He turned and stormed back up the stairs, leaving a thick, furious silence in his wake. A week later, the morning sun was once again streaming through the windows. Eleanor, dressed impeccably for a long drive, stood with her arms crossed, tapping an impatient foot. She checked her watch. It was past 7. She marched up the stairs and threw open Julian's bedroom door without knocking. He was still asleep, buried under a mountain of expensive linens. "Julian," she snapped, her voice cracking like a whip. "Get up, now." He bolted upright, blinking in the sudden light, looking groggy and confused. When he saw his mother's thunderous expression, he sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Mom, what the hell?" "It's Saturday." Eleanor walked to his closet, pulled out a pair of tailored slacks and a crisp, white shirt, and threw them onto the bed. "Get dressed. We're leaving in 30 minutes to go meet your future wife. I told you this was happening. Are you going to defy me again?" "Yes, I am," he shot back, his voice rising. "I already told you I don't want to get married. This is my life, Mom, not a business merger. The person I marry should be someone I love." "Love," she scoffed. "You wouldn't know love if it bit you. You mistake lust for love, and it has made you weak and reckless." They were standing face to face now, a mirror of each other's stubborn pride. Richard appeared in the doorway, drawn by the shouting. "Julian, just listen to your mother," he said, his voice placating. "Just go along with it. For her sake. Please, son, no more fighting. She only wants what's best for you. A dragon bride will change your life for the better. I can't believe you're siding with her on this. You're as crazy as she is." Julian was desperate now, cornered. Eleanor put a hand to her chest, her expression shifting to one of theatrical pain. "So that's it? You're going to defy me? You want me to have a stroke, is that it? You want to be the death of your own mother?" Julian stared at her, his jaw tight. He looked from his mother's manipulative tears to his father's pleading eyes. He was trapped, the fight drained out of him, replaced by a cold, hard resignation. "Fine," he said, his voice flat. "Fine. You win." Eleanor's face brightened instantly. "Good. Now get dressed." "But," he interrupted, holding up a hand. "On one condition." She paused. "What condition?" "I will go with you today. I will meet this girl, and if you push it, I will stand at the altar and I will put a ring on her finger. But that is it. That is where my obligation ends. After the wedding, you don't get to force me to do anything. You don't get to demand I spend time with her or be a husband to her in any real way. She will be your daughter-in-law, living in your house, not my wife. Do we have a deal?" Eleanor hesitated. It wasn't the perfect victory she'd envisioned, but it was a start. Once the girl was here, under her roof, things could be managed. She could mold the situation, mold them both. "Deal," she said, her voice firm. "Now, get ready, we're late." She and Richard turned and left the room. Downstairs, as they waited in the cavernous living room, Richard let out a long, slow sigh. "Do you think we're doing the right thing, Eleanor?" he murmured, looking out the window. "Forcing him like this. It feels wrong." Eleanor whirled on him, her eyes flashing. "Don't you dare get cold feet now, Richard. This was your idea as much as mine. You were the one who went to the psychic after his last incident. You were the one who was told a dragon was the only thing that could save him from himself." I know, I just..." Richard's voice trailed off, a deep sadness in his eyes. "I just remember how things went with Laura. If I hadn't been so weak then, maybe her and her son, maybe Matthew." "Stop," the word was ice. Eleanor's face had gone pale, her knuckles white as she gripped the back of a chair. "Do not say her name in this house." She took a menacing step closer to him. "Julian doesn't know about any of that, and he will never know. She and that boy are a part of your past that is dead and buried. Am I making myself clear? Richard flinched, looking away. He nodded slowly, defeated. Yes, Eleanor, clear. The air between them was thick with secrets and bitter history, a silence far louder than any argument. And upstairs, their son was getting dressed to go and claim a bride he had no intention of loving, a girl whose only qualification was the year she was born, a girl who had no idea she was about to walk into a gilded cage built on a foundation of superstition, regret, and old, unhealed wounds. The sleek, black sedan was a spaceship that had landed in another world. It crawled down the unpaved, dusty road leading to our house. Its polished exterior a stark contrast to the rust and poverty of Havenwood. As the car came to a stop at the edge of our property, Julian crossed his arms and stared out the window, his expression sour. "I'm not getting out," he announced, his voice flat. Eleanor, sitting in the back with him, turned, her patience already worn thin. "Julian, don't start. We've been driving for 3 hours. Show some respect." "Respect? For what?" "For this." "Sham?" He gestured vaguely at the world outside. "No. I told you, I'll play my part when it matters. Right now, it doesn't. I'll stay with the car. You and Maria go do whatever it is you're going to do." Eleanor opened her mouth to argue, but she could see the stubborn set of his jaw. A public scene here would be humiliating. She shot him a look that could curdle milk, then smoothed her dress and her expression. "Fine," she clipped. "Stay here, but don't you dare cause any trouble." She and Maria got out of the car. Eleanor's expensive heels sank slightly into the soft dirt, and a look of profound distaste crossed her face as she surveyed our small, weathered shack. But when she stepped inside, the genuine, humble warmth of my mother's welcome seemed to soothe her. Mom had put on her best dress, a faded floral print she'd had for years, and her face was flushed with a mixture of anxiety and hope. "Please, come in," Mom said, her voice a little breathless. "It's an honor to have you in our home. The journey was long. You must be tired." Eleanor offered a tight, polite smile, taking in the small, clean room. She gestured for Maria to place a large, beautifully arranged fruit basket on our wobbly table. "Thank you for having us," Eleanor said, her voice smooth as silk. "My son, Julian, is with me as well, but he insisted on watching the car. He's very protective of it." Mom nodded, understanding completely. Then, seeing Eleanor's eyes darting towards the back of the house, she knew what was expected. "Lucy," she called out, her voice a little louder than usual. "Honey, bring the tea out for our guests." From the small alcove that served as our kitchen, I heard my name. My hands were trembling as I arranged the mismatched teacups on our only tray. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. I took a deep, shaky breath and stepped out. "Please," I said softly, my eyes downcast. "Have some tea." I offered the tray first to Eleanor, then to Maria. Maria took a cup with a warm, encouraging smile. But Eleanor didn't take one. She just watched me. Her eyes, sharp and analytical, traveled from the top of my head down to my worn-out shoes. It was an inspection, a silent appraisal of a piece of property. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she nodded, a small, almost imperceptible dip of her chin. A look of satisfaction settled on her face. "She's a lovely girl," Eleanor said to my mother, but her eyes never left me. "Very presentable. I was worried, that Julian might find some fault, but I think he'll be quite pleased." I felt a hot blush creep up my neck. I was being discussed as if I weren't even there. Excusing myself, I murmured something about checking on the kettle and retreated to the kitchen, leaving them to discuss my fate. But the house was so small, their voices carried easily. Eleanor got straight to the point. From her handbag, she produced a thick envelope and pushed it across the table towards my mother. "This is a gift," she said, her tone businesslike. $20,000 for you to use for your medical needs and to prepare your daughter for her new life with us." She paused, her voice hardening slightly. "But before we proceed, I must ask you one more time. You are absolutely certain she was born in the year of the dragon?" My mother's voice was earnest and unwavering. "On my life, this is the most important day of my daughter's life. I would never lie about such a thing." "Good." Eleanor seemed to relax completely. "Then I am satisfied. Are there any other requests regarding the wedding ceremony?" Mom hesitated. The truth was, she was in no state to host a celebration, and the thought of celebrating selling her daughter was a bitter pill to swallow. She didn't know how to voice any of this without causing offense. Maria, ever the diplomat, quickly stepped in. "Mrs. Vance, if I may, in a small town like this, a simple ceremony is best. Perhaps you set the date for the wedding to take place at your home, a grander affair. And for here, a simple dowry and your blessing would be more than enough." Eleanor nodded, pleased with the practical solution. "That works perfectly. I will send a few traditional gifts next month, some gold jewelry for the bride, and we will come to pick her up on a day deemed auspicious by our astrologer. Does that sound acceptable to you?" My mother, overwhelmed and out of her depth, could only nod. "Yes, yes, whatever you think is best. Excellent." Then it settled. Eleanor stood up, smoothing her dress. From the other side of the wall, I heard the sound of teacups clinking. "Well then," Maria's cheerful voice cut through the tension. "Shall we seal this new family bond with a cup of tea, ladies?" Laughter followed, bright, polite, and completely devoid of warmth. In my corner of the house, I leaned my head against the cool wood, my world shrinking down to the sound of their voices. It was done. My life had just been negotiated and sold. I closed my eyes, and a single tear escaped, tracing a cold path down my temple. I was trading my life, my freedom, and the ghost of a love I had barely known for an envelope of cash on a worn-out kitchen table. A month later, the wedding was a blur of red silk and forced smiles. The party was lavish, held at the Vance mansion, but I felt like a ghost haunting someone else's celebration. When the last guest had finally departed, I found myself in a bedroom that was larger than our entire house back in Havenwood. The decor was opulent, everything in shades of crimson and gold. I sat in front of an ornate vanity mirror, my reflection a stranger in a heavy, elaborate dress. My eyes were red-rimmed and puffy. The happy, smiling mask I had worn all day had finally cracked. I took the pins from my hair, letting the long, dark waves tumble down my back. For years, someone had told me he loved my hair, that he loved it so much he fell in love with its owner. Now, that hair was still here, still long and dark, but its owner was married to a man she didn't know, a man who clearly despised her. My hands stroked my own hair as the pain lanced through me. I thought of Matthew. 2 months. It had been 2 long, silent months since he'd left. Was he okay? Did he miss me? Did his heart break? Even a little, when he heard the news that the girl he loved was now another man's wife? I was lost in my thoughts when the bedroom door creaked open. Julian stumbled in, his movements clumsy and uncoordinated. He reeked of whiskey. "Where are all my little kittens?" he slurred, looking around the room with unfocused eyes. "Come here," Kitty, kitty. I jumped up, startled. I rushed to his side as he swayed, catching him just before he fell. Julian? Are you okay? Why did you drink so much? He tried to focus on my face, then roughly pushed my hands away. His eyes were bleary, his breath a foul cloud of alcohol. Let go of me, he mumbled. Who the hell are you? My heart sank. I'm Lucy, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Your wife. Lucy? He squinted. Don't know any Lucy. And with that, he collapsed face first onto the magnificent bed and was instantly asleep. I stood there, frozen, a statue of a bride on her wedding night. The irony was so thick, so bitter, it was almost comical. Here I was, in this room, decorated for passion and new beginnings, surrounded by the laughter and well wishes of hundreds of people, and my groom was passed out drunk. The bride's joyful anticipation was replaced by the hollow echo of my own choked sobs. This wasn't a marriage, it was a transaction, and my wedding night was just the first lonely payment. I stood watching him for a long time, the tears drying on my cheeks. Then he stirred. He rolled onto his side, his body convulsing, and vomited all over the expensive silk bedspread. A wave of disgust washed over me. I wanted to walk away. I wanted to leave him there in his own filth, but I couldn't. This was my new life. This was my duty. If I made a scene on the very first night, what would his parents think? So, with a heavy heart, I found a bottle of rubbing alcohol in the bathroom. I gently helped him sit up, dabbing some on his temples to ease the nausea. I stripped the soiled linens from the bed, cleaned up the mess on the floor, and threw everything into a hamper. Then, I found a fresh bowl of water and a cloth and carefully wiped his face. I was the perfect, dutiful wife, even though he wasn't my husband. But my care was met with a new kind of cruelty. As I wiped his brow, his eyes fluttered open slightly. His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. His voice was a slurred, dreamy whisper, but it wasn't my name, he called. Jessica. Oh, Tiffany. Come here, baby. I snatched my hand back as if I'd been burned. I stared at him, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. So, he had someone else. He was calling her name in his drunken dreams. Then why? I whispered to his sleeping form, the question, a ragged tear in the silence. Why did you marry me? My voice, full of a strange new anger, must have pierced through his drunken haze. He stirred, propping himself up on one elbow. He rubbed his temples, then looked at me, his eyes clearing slightly with irritation. You have a boyfriend? He grumbled, his voice raspy. Don't lie. I bet you do. A girl like you, from a place like that, I'm sure you left someone behind. His hypocrisy was breathtaking. I didn't even hesitate. Yes, I said, my voice cold and clear. I did. A cruel, knowing smirk spread across his face. Thought so. You've got a lot of nerve, talking about love in front of your husband. You were the one calling other women's names in front of your wife. I shot back. You tell me, you don't love me, so why did you marry me? Why did I marry you? He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Go ask my mother. It's all because of your stupid birth year. This whole damn mess is because you're a dragon. Now, what about you? You had a boyfriend. Why did you marry me? Don't you dare ask me that, I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. You're not stupid. I think you're smart enough to figure out exactly why I'm here. He got to his feet, swaying slightly. He pointed a finger at my face, his expression one of pure disgust. Enough of this. Get out. This is my room. I stared at him, incredulous. Are you still drunk? In case you've forgotten, your mother brought me here. She arranged this. Where am I supposed to get out to? Back to whatever hellhole you crawled out of." He sneered. "But I guess if you leave now, my mother will just start her chanting again." He sighed, rubbing his face. "Fine, you sleep here. I'll get a folding cot for you. I'll sleep on the bed. With you in the room, at least I won't feel so alone." He started to walk away, but he was still unsteady. "Don't bother," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "I'm used to hardship. I'll sleep on the floor. You can have the bed." He looked at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by indifference. He just shrugged and collapsed back onto the mattress. And so, on my wedding night, while my husband slept soundly in a king-sized bed, I curled up on the cold, hard floor, covered by a single, thin blanket. He never once looked down. He never once asked if I was cold. He just slept, leaving me to face the long, dark, lonely night by myself. The days that followed bled into a monotonous, soul-crushing routine. I became a ghost in a gilded cage, my existence defined by a rigid set of duties. I was the perfect daughter-in-law. I woke before the sun, managed the household, treated my in-laws with unwavering respect, and catered to my husband's every whim, even though he treated me like I was less than the dirt on his shoes. Julian's life remained unchanged. He was out all day, every day. I heard whispers from Maria about clubs, bars, and the endless parade of women who clung to his arm. He would stumble home late, always drunk, often picking fights, his words like venomous darts aimed at my heart. At first, his cruelty wounded me. I would cry myself to sleep on my cot on the floor. Sometimes, I'd talk back, my own frustration boiling over, but it only ever made things worse. So, I learned to endure. I became his silent, nocturnal caretaker, cleaning up his messes, listening to him call out other women's names in his sleep. The first few times, the names felt like stabs to the heart. After a few weeks, I became numb. I would simply turn away, pulling my thin blanket tighter, and drift into a fitful, dreamless sleep. Months passed like this. I was a wife in name only, a roommate who slept on the floor. During the day, I helped Maria with the housework and ran errands for Eleanor, which often involved collecting money from the various high-stakes, informal lending circles she ran, her investment groups, as she called them. When the loneliness became too much to bear, I would confide in Maria. She was my only friend, my only connection to the world I'd left behind. She'd listen with a sympathetic ear, pat my hand, and offer what little comfort she could. But I never complained to Eleanor, not once. My silent endurance, my quiet obedience, was the one thing that seemed to please her. It was the only thing I did right in her eyes. One morning, the clock had just ticked past 5. The night before, Julian had come home close to 3 a.m., so he was still sleeping the deep, dreamless sleep of the dead. I, on the other hand, had been awake for hours, despite my exhaustion. I crept downstairs to the kitchen. I put a pot on the stove to make a simple rice porridge for Julian, knowing he'd wake up hungover and sick. I boiled water for tea, then began sweeping the vast, silent house. My movements quiet and methodical. By the time the sky began to lighten from black to a soft gray, Maria came downstairs. She saw me by the stove, the kettle just beginning to whistle, and rushed over, her face a mask of panic. "Lucy, child, what are you doing?" she whispered urgently, trying to take the tea kettle from my hand. "You'll get me fired. I've told you 100 times. You sleep in. Let me handle the morning chores." I gave her a small, tired smile. "Maria, please, stop calling me Mrs. Vance Jr. or whatever it is you come up with. It's just Lucy. I'm still your niece, aren't I?" She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Things are different now. You're the lady of the house. I'm the help. It doesn't feel different, I said quietly, stirring the porridge. What are you cooking? She asked, her voice softening. Porridge for Julian, I replied. He came home. Late again last night. He was sick. I'm worried he's not taking care of himself. Maria looked at me, her eyes filled with a deep, aching pity. She saw the dark circles under my eyes, the way my shoulders hunched with a weariness that went far beyond physical exhaustion. Oh, my sweet girl, she said, her voice cracking. When I suggested this match, I truly believed it would be a good thing for you. I thought this family was decent, that they had class. I saw how handsome Julian was, how well he would look beside you. I thought he would give you a stable home, and that your mother would finally have peace of mind. I never imagined he would treat you this way. A wife for months, and still, no love, no kindness. For so long, I had held my sorrow in, building a dam around my heart. But her words, spoken with such genuine regret, were the first crack in that dam. My eyes welled up with tears. It's okay, Maria, I choked out. I made my choice. I have to live with it now. All I can hope for is that my mom is healthy, that her illness is finally under control. That's all that matters. Maria reached out and squeezed my shoulder, her touch a small anchor in a vast, lonely sea. You are a good daughter, I just hope. I hope one day that boy will change, that he will see what a treasure he has in you. Now, have you thought about asking Mrs. Vance if you can go home for a visit? Your mother must miss you terribly. I quickly wiped my eyes, shaking my head. Not yet. Maybe in a few more months. If she sees me looking like this, she'll worry. I can't let her worry. I forced a smile. You go on and start your work. I'll bring the tea up to my in-laws. They should be waking up soon. All right, she said, her voice full of concern. But you let me watch that pot. You hear? I hear you. Upstairs, in the formal sitting room, Eleanor sat at a large mahogany desk, a stack of cash in front of her. She was counting it meticulously, a deep frown creasing her brow. Richard walked in, saw the thunderous look on his wife's face, and sighed. What is it now, Eleanor? He asked, sitting down across from her. It's barely sunrise, and you look like you're ready to declare war. She clicked her tongue in irritation. I collected from my investment group yesterday. $10,000. Exactly. I counted it twice before putting it in the safe. This morning, I counted again, and it's short, $500. Oh, for heaven's sake, Eleanor, he said, shaking his head. Don't start accusing the staff again. You know how you get. I'm not accusing anyone, she snapped. But money doesn't just walk away on its own, Richard. $500 is not a small amount. He just shook his head, a look of weary resignation on his face. It was an old, familiar dance. He had learned long ago that arguing was pointless. He fell silent, watching her recount the bills for the 10th time, a deep-seated regret gnawing at him. He was a passenger in his own life, a man who had traded his backbone for a life of quiet comfort. I entered the room carrying a tray with their morning tea, my footsteps silent on the thick Persian rug. Good morning, I said softly. I've brought your tea. Richard smiled at me. Thank you, Lucy. Just put it on the table. But Eleanor's sharp gaze was fixed on me. Lucy, yesterday, when you collected the money for me, did you miss any houses? I thought back, my mind racing. No, Eleanor. I went to every address on the list. I collected everything. Are you sure? She pressed. Because I'm short $500. A cold knot of fear tightened in my stomach. She was looking at me, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. But before I could defend myself, her attention shifted. "It was probably him," she muttered, more to herself than to me. She looked back at me, her frustration finding a new target. "And you're his wife. Why can't you control him? Why can't you keep him home at night? What good are you if you can't even do that? I thought a wife would settle him down, but you're as useless as a stone. All you do is sit there quietly, like a lump of clay. That's not what I brought you here for. I brought you here to be a wife, to make this family stronger. And look at you. Months, and still no good news. No sign of a grandchild. The unfairness of it all was a physical blow. I felt the blood drain from my face. Richard, seeing my distress, finally spoke up. "Eleanor, that's enough," he said, his voice sharp. "It's your son who's the problem, not Lucy. Go and discipline him. Don't take your frustrations out on her. Since the day she arrived, this girl has been nothing but respectful, obedient, and kind. She hasn't put a foot wrong, and you still find ways to criticize her. It's cruel." He took a breath, his voice rising with a rare show of passion. "And as for having children, that's between them. Stop meddling. You're turning this home into a madhouse." His defense of me only seemed to pour gasoline on the fire of her rage. She shot him a venomous look. "What do you know about it?" she spat. "You think you're so righteous? You think you're any better? If you had been a stronger man, if you had kept your husband where he belonged, none of this would be happening. My son wouldn't be a disaster. This family wouldn't be a mess." Richard flinched as if she had slapped him. A dark, unspoken history hung heavy in the air between them. I stood frozen, caught in the crossfire of a war that had started long before I ever arrived. Eleanor turned her glare back to me. "Where is he, Lucy? Where is Julian?" I flinched, my eyes darting towards the staircase. He came home very late last night. He's still sleeping." "Sleeping?" she shrieked, her voice echoing in the high-ceilinged room. "It's daylight and he's still sleeping? Go upstairs and wake him up. Tell him I want to see him. Now." "Yes," I whispered, my heart pounding. "Yes, Eleanor. Right away." I practically ran from the room, escaping the suffocating tension. I found Julian in bed, propped against the headboard, a cigarette dangling from his lips. The room filled with a hazy blue smoke. He scowled when he saw me. "What were you telling my mother about me?" he demanded, his voice rough. I could hear her screaming from up here. I busied myself with folding the blankets on my cot, my back to him, my voice tired. "You think I have time to tattle on you? Your mother is angry because she's missing money. Now she's calling for you. You should go down and talk to her." He grunted, then crushed the cigarette out in an ashtray. He gestured with his chin towards the butt. "Here, take this, and throw it in the trash for me." I looked at him. He was handsome. I couldn't deny it. Objectively, he was a beautiful man. Strong jaw, dark brows, clear skin, but his beauty was spoiled by a deep-seated laziness and a casual cruelty that made him ugly to me. For a moment, something inside me snapped. "You're not paralyzed, are you?" I said, my voice dripping with a sarcasm I didn't know I possessed. "The trash can is right next to you. Why don't you throw it out yourself?" His eyes narrowed. "I'm your husband. A husband gives an order. The wife obeys. Then you should probably break your arms and legs," I shot back. "Become a complete invalid. Then, I promise, I will spend the rest of my life taking care of you." "You?" "Shut your mouth," he hissed, his face darkening. "Who do you think you are? To me, you're nothing but the hired help. A maid my mother paid for. Got it?" The word maid struck a nerve. "Oh, I'm a maid, am I?" I said, turning to face him fully, my hands on my hips. "Well, at least I'm not a useless parasite like you. At least I'm not spending my days and nights getting drunk with prostitutes, living off my parents' money. You have no ambition, no backbone. You're not a man at all." His face contorted with rage. He raised his hand, his eyes blazing. "You say one more word, and I will slap you across the face." I lifted my chin, staring him down, unafraid. "Go on. Do it. You think hitting me will shut me up? I've been living in this house for months. I'm used to your threats. I'm used to your pathetic attempts to feel powerful. You don't scare me anymore." He lunged, his hand swinging through the air. But just before his palm could connect with my cheek, his mother's voice boomed from the bottom of the stairs, sharp and impatient. "Lucy, is he awake yet? What are you two doing up there that's taking so long?" His hand froze in mid-air. We both stood there, breathing heavily, the moment of violence suspended. I looked him dead in the eye, my voice a low, cold whisper. "If your mother finds out that we fight like this, that this marriage is a complete failure, it will be your fault, not mine. Now go. She's waiting for you." I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, his hand still raised, his face a mask of thwarted rage. I went straight to the kitchen, my hands still trembling slightly from the confrontation. Julian, meanwhile, shuffled downstairs to the living room, yawning and stretching as if he hadn't a care in the world. "Mom, what's with all the yelling so early?" he grumbled, slumping into an armchair. Eleanor glared at him, shaking her head in disgust. "Early? It's nearly noon, you useless boy. Do you do anything besides waste your life away?" He leaned his head back and closed his eyes, already bored with the conversation. "I taught Lucy how to drive so she can run your errands for you, didn't I? What more do you want? And my social life is my own business. Stop nagging. You're giving me a headache." Richard, who had been silently observing, finally spoke up, his voice stern. "You have a family now, Julian. A wife. This lifestyle of yours has to end. You've been coddled your whole life, and it's ruined you." Julian sat up straight, a defiant look on his face. "Oh, here we go. You know, you two made a deal with me. I married your precious dragon bride, and in return, you let me live my life. My wife doesn't have a problem with it, so why should you?" Richard's face flushed with anger. "Don't you dare." The argument escalated, their voices rising and falling in a familiar, toxic rhythm. It was a play they had performed 1,000 times. I could hear it all from the kitchen, a soundtrack of dysfunction to my morning chores. Suddenly, my mother-in-law's voice came to me from the living room. A soft but firm intervention. "That's enough fighting. I have an appointment this morning. Julian, go change your clothes. You're driving me." Julian frowned, about to argue, but then a slow, crafty smile spread across his face. "Actually, Mom, I'm feeling really tired. I think I'm going to stay home today, spend some quality time with my wife." The lie was so blatant, so transparent, it was almost insulting. But Richard, surprisingly, took the bait. A flicker of hope appeared in his eyes. "Let him stay, Eleanor," he said quickly. "If he wants to be with his wife, let him. I'll drive you." Eleanor looked at her husband, a hint of concern in her eyes. "Are you feeling well enough?" "I'm fine," he said, standing up. "Let's go." And just like that, they left. The house fell silent. Julian immediately went back upstairs and collapsed into bed. Falling back asleep within minutes, I heard the front door close, the car engine start and fade away, and then there was only the quiet hum of the large, empty house. I went back to my chores, my mind a whirl of confusion. Why did he lie? Why did he pretend to want to spend time with me? Was it just to get out of driving his mother? Or was there something else? Something I couldn't understand? I sat at the kitchen table, peeling oranges, my thoughts drifting to the hopeless tangle my life had become. How long could I keep this up? How long until this gilded cage crushed the very soul out of me? I didn't hear the footsteps approaching. I didn't know anyone was there until a voice, hesitant and familiar, called my name. Lucy? I jumped, the paring knife clattering onto the floor. I whirled around, and my heart stopped. Standing in the doorway, looking frail and impossibly out of place, was my mother. For months, I had been waiting for a letter, a phone call. I had longed to see her, but seeing her here, now, in this house, filled me with a sudden, sharp panic. "Mom," I gasped, rushing to her, my voice a choked whisper. "What are you doing here? The trip. Was it hard on you? Are you okay?" She pulled me into a fierce hug, and I could feel the tremor in her thin arms. Her eyes were wet with tears. "I'm fine, baby. I'm fine." She pulled back, her hands framing my face, her gaze searching and worried. "Your in-laws? Where are they? The house is so quiet." "They had an appointment," I said, quickly wiping my eyes and leading her to a chair. "Only Maria was here, and she showed me where you were." My mother's eyes scanned my face, taking in the faint shadows, the tired lines that hadn't been there before. "Lucy," she said, her voice low and serious, "tell me the truth. Are you and that boy, are you unhappy?" The question hit me like a physical blow. A lie immediately formed on my lips, the same one I had been practicing in my head for months, the one where I was happy, cherished, and loved. But looking into her worried eyes, I couldn't do it. The pretense was too heavy to carry. I shook my head, a sad, small smile on my face. "It's fine, Mom. Julian is very good to me. He spoils me, really." But my voice lacked conviction. My eyes couldn't meet hers. She knew. Mothers always know. She didn't press, but her expression shifted from worry to a deep, heartbreaking sorrow. She knew I was lying to protect her. "Don't lie to me, Lucy," she said, her own voice breaking. "Maria sent me a letter. She told me everything." Her voice rose, filled with a terrible, helpless grief. "Oh, my child, I never thought you would suffer like this. Why didn't you tell me?" The dam broke. All the months of silent tears, of swallowed insults, of lonely nights on the floor, it all came rushing out. I fell to my knees, burying my face in her lap, my body shaking with ragged, unstoppable sobs. "I'm sorry, Mom," I cried, my words muffled against the fabric of her dress. "I didn't want you to worry. It's okay. The house is beautiful. We have enough to eat. You have your medicine. If I have to suffer a little for that, it's worth it. As long as you're with me, I don't need anything else." Her tears fell onto my hair, hot and silent. She stroked my head, her hand trembling. "A beautiful house is empty without love, Lucy. I thought I was giving you a chance at a happy life. I never imagined. Oh, Lucy, I am so sorry." We clung to each other, our shared grief a raw, open wound in the silent kitchen. And then, from the top of the stairs, a voice, laced with irritation and arrogance, cut through the air. "Lucy, are you deaf? I've been calling you for 5 minutes. Julian." He hadn't heard our conversation, only my name being called. He appeared at the kitchen doorway, still rubbing sleep from his eyes, and then he froze. He saw my mother. He saw my tear-streaked face. His expression shifted from irritation to a guarded, suspicious surprise. "You," he said, his voice flat. He wasn't speaking to me. He was speaking to my mother. "When did you get here? Why didn't anyone tell me you were coming? What is this? A surprise inspection?" My mother, startled, quickly composed herself. She wiped her eyes and looked at her son-in-law, her voice gentle. "Hello, Julian. I just came up for a visit. It's been so long since I've seen Lucy." Julian's eyes were cold. "Well, you've seen her. She's fine. Hasn't lost any weight. So you can go." The casual cruelty of his words made me see red. "Julian," I snapped, getting to my feet. "That's my mother you're talking to. Show some respect." He shrugged, a dismissive, infuriating gesture. "Respect? Why? Did I miss the memo where I was supposed to be thrilled you have visitors?" He looked my mother up and down, a cruel smirk on his face. "Look at you. You've put on some weight. Your skin looks better. The country air must not have been good for you. You're better off here. So what more do you want?" My mother's face crumpled. The insult, so casually delivered, had found its mark. I just wanted to see my daughter," she whispered, her voice trembling. I thought when I gave her to you, she would be your wife, your family, that I would be. Your family too. I didn't sell her to you." Julian laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. "Didn't you?" He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a low, menacing tone. "Let's be honest. This was a transaction. We paid a price, and we got a product. A very well-behaved, very quiet product." He looked at me, his eyes full of contempt. "Right, Lucy?" I was shaking with rage. I couldn't form words. I just stood there, my fists clenched, my heart hammering against my ribs. I wanted to scream, to hit him, to claw that smug, handsome face until it bled. "Julian," I finally managed to choke out, my voice tight and dangerous. "You need to stop talking. Now." He turned his cold gaze back to me. "Or what? You'll tell on me? Go ahead. Tell my parents. See whose side they take." He reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and tossed a few crumpled bills onto the table in front of my mother. "Here," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "For your trouble. Bus fare back to wherever it is you came from, and a little extra for your inconvenience." My mother stared at the money, her face ashen. She looked like he had slapped her. She slowly shook her head, pushing the bills away. "No, I don't want your money. Take it," he insisted, his voice hardening. "It's a gift, a thank you, for your excellent daughter." He turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. "Oh, and Lucy? My parents will be home soon. Tell them I went out to see some friends. Don't mention any of this." And then he was gone. The front door slammed shut, a sound that echoed through the silent, cavernous house. My mother slumped in her chair as if her strings had been cut. A single, silent tear traced a path down her wrinkled cheek. And I didn't know what to do. The rage, the shame, the helplessness, it all churned inside me. A toxic, bitter stew. I knelt before her, taking her cold, trembling hands in mine. "I'm sorry, Mom," I whispered, the words a raw ache in my throat. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to see this." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a pain so deep it seemed bottomless. She patted my hand, forcing a small, watery smile. "It's not your fault, my child," she said, her voice a fragile whisper. "It's mine. I put you here." She took a deep, shuddering breath. "It's all right, I think. I think I should go home now. I have the chickens to feed." She stood up, her movements slow and stiff, like an old woman. She picked up the small, worn bag she had brought with her. "Here, I brought you some vegetables from the garden and a chicken. Cook a nice meal for your family." She handed me the bag, and my heart shattered into a million pieces. Even now, even after being so brutally insulted, her first thought was of me, of feeding the very people who had just torn her heart out. "Mom?" I started, my voice thick with unshed tears. "I have to go, Lucy." She put her hand on my cheek, her touch feather light. Then she turned and walked away, her back straight, her dignity a fragile shield against the cruelty of this house. I watched her go, a small, stooped figure disappearing down the long, opulent hallway. I watched her walk out of the gilded cage, back into a world of poverty and hardship that was, somehow, infinitely kinder than this one. And I was left behind, clutching a bag of homegrown vegetables. My heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. A month crawled by, each day a carbon copy of the last. I moved through the house like a well-oiled machine, performing my duties with a quiet efficiency that masked the turmoil in my heart. But something had shifted. Julian's casual cruelty had hardened into a constant, simmering resentment. Eleanor, sensing the growing tension, seemed to be looking for any excuse to find fault with me. The gilded cage was shrinking, its bars pressing in on me from all sides. One afternoon, I returned home late. I had spent the entire day running Eleanor's errands, driving all over the city to collect payments for her investment groups. The traffic had been brutal, and a dizzying headache was pounding behind my eyes. I was exhausted. All I wanted was to lie down for a few minutes before starting dinner. I went to my room, collapsed onto my cot, and fell asleep almost instantly. I was pulled from the depths of a heavy, dreamless sleep by a sound that had become all too familiar. Eleanor's shriek. "Lucy, Julian, where are you two? I've been calling and calling. Are you deaf?" I shot upright, my heart hammering in my chest. I glanced at the clock. It was after 4. I had slept for hours. Panic seized me. I scrambled off the cot and rushed downstairs, my hair a mess, my clothes rumpled. Eleanor was standing in the middle of the living room, her face a mask of pure fury. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes blazing. "There you are," she hissed as I appeared at the bottom of the stairs. "I'm sorry, Eleanor," I stammered, my voice trembling. "I just got back. I wasn't feeling well. She cut me off with a sharp, angry gesture, throwing her designer handbag onto a nearby sofa with such force that it bounced. "Where were you? I called your cell phone a dozen times. No answer." "I'm sorry," I whispered, bowing my head. My phone must have been on silent. I was asleep. Her eyes narrowed. "Asleep? While I'm out there dealing with a crisis, you're in here, sleeping?" She paused, her gaze sweeping the empty room. "Where is Julian?" He went out around noon," I mumbled. The words were barely out of my mouth when her face contorted with a fresh wave of rage. She snatched a delicate porcelain teacup from the coffee table and hurled it against the wall. It shattered with a sickening crash, the sound echoing the splintering of my own composure. "My God," she screamed, her voice ragged with despair. This family is falling apart, and he's out. Playing. Oh, God, why am I so unlucky?" She was breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling. I stood frozen, terrified. I had never seen her like this. This wasn't her usual icy disdain. This was something raw, something primal. I cautiously took a step forward, bending down to pick up the larger shards of porcelain. "Eleanor," I said softly, my voice shaking. "What's wrong? Tell me what happened. Maybe I can help." My offer of help seemed to be the spark that ignited the inferno. She whirled on me, her eyes blazing with a terrifying, unholy light. "Help?" she shrieked, her voice dripping with scorn. "You want to help? Let me tell you what's happened, you little curse. My investment partners have defaulted. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Gone. The shipment of goods for the business seized by customs. Everything is ruined. Everything. So, you tell me, little girl, what exactly can you do to help?" Her words were like blows. I flinched, my hand tightening around a sharp piece of porcelain. I didn't even notice when it sliced into my palm, didn't feel the sting or the warm trickle of blood. She wasn't finished. Her voice dropped, becoming low and menacing. "And you, the money. I told you to collect from everyone, did you?" I scrambled to my feet, clutching my bleeding hand behind my back, trying to hide the injury. I tried, Eleanor," I stammered, the pain in my hand a dull throb beneath the sharp terror in my heart. "I collected from 5 of them. The other 5, they said they didn't have the money right now. They asked for more time." Her face, which I thought couldn't get any darker, became a thundercloud of pure rage. She took a menacing step towards me, her voice a low, guttural snarl. "They didn't have it?" she repeated, her words dripping with venom. "And you just accepted that? You just walked away? You useless, spineless little fool. When someone owes you money, you demand it. You don't ask politely. My God, I am surrounded by incompetence, a deadbeat, philandering son, and a wife who's too timid to collect what's owed. All you do is eat. You eat my food, you live in my house, and you contribute nothing. I think I might actually die from the stress of it all." I stood there, trembling, as the verbal assault washed over me. I was a statue, frozen in a storm of her making. For the first time since I'd arrived, I began to cry, not silent, dignified tears, but ragged, helpless sobs. My crying seemed to infuriate her even more. "What are you crying for?" she snapped. "Am I not miserable enough for you? Are you trying to jinx me? To bring more bad luck down on this house?" I looked up, my vision blurred with tears. "No," I choked out. I'm not. I'm scared, and I'm sad for you. I'm sad that this is happening to the family." She threw her head back and laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. It was a harsh, ugly bark of disbelief. "You're sad for me?" She leaned in close, her voice a poisonous whisper. Don't you dare pretend to have feelings for me. Let me ask you something. Honestly, are you a dragon? Or are you a snake? Because ever since you slithered your way into this house, you have brought nothing but misfortune. Tell me the truth, so I can at least call an exorcist and have this curse removed." The words were a physical blow. A curse. A snake. I felt the last of my composure crumble. This was it, the absolute bottom. I had swallowed every insult, endured every moment of neglect, but this was an attack on my very being. "I think," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, though my body was shaking, "that you should talk to Julian, tell him to stop his lifestyle, and to help with the family business. A business like yours needs a man's hand to guide it. I took a shaky breath, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. And the people you associate with, your investment partners, I don't think they're trustworthy, Eleanor. Are you trying to lecture me? She hissed, her eyes narrowing to slits. Let me tell you something, little girl. Without me, this family would still be living in a shack. I built this empire. There is no one smarter or tougher than me in this city. And as for you, you're a woman who can't even keep her own husband at home. So maybe you should take a good, long look at yourself before you start giving me advice. The injustice of it all was suffocating. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but no words came out. I just stood there, my hand bleeding behind my back, my heart shattered as she continued her tirade. Just then, the front door opened and Julian walked in. He was dressed to the nines, his hair perfectly coiffed, a cloud of expensive cologne and cheap beer preceding him. He saw his mother's furious face, my tear-streaked one, and the shattered porcelain on the floor. He didn't miss a beat. He walked straight to his mother, completely ignoring me, and put a comforting arm around her shoulders. Mom, what's going on? You look upset. His feigned concern was so nauseating, it almost made me gag. Eleanor's mood softened instantly in his presence. She leaned into him, her voice taking on a whining, self-pitying tone. Julian, you're finally home. You wouldn't believe the day I've had. He shot a quick, triumphant smirk at me over his mother's shoulder, then turned his attention back to her, patting her back soothingly. He then looked at me, his eyes cold and commanding. You, he said, go to the kitchen. Get me and my mother a glass of orange juice. I just stared at him, my silence a rebellion. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there, letting my defiance hang in the air. Eleanor, however, continued her lament, her voice rising again. The business is in trouble, Julian. I think I might have to sell the car. Julian's face went slack with shock. What? The car? No, you can't. If you sell the car, what am I supposed to drive? How am I supposed to maintain my image? His blatant selfishness, even in the face of his family's ruin, was the final straw. He was a child in a man's body, and I was the convenient scapegoat for all of their failings. I finally found my voice. It was quiet, but it cut through the room like a shard of glass. Your image? I repeated, my voice dripping with a contempt I didn't bother to hide. Is that all you care about? Julian turned to me, his expression murderous. But it was his next words, spoken to his mother but aimed at me, that would change everything. You see, Mom? He said, his voice laced with venom. I told you this was a mistake, insisting on marrying a dragon for good luck. Well, where's the luck? All I see is a string of disasters. This family is worse off now than we ever were before she came. The accusation, so direct, so cruel, hung in the air. It was the moment the foundation of the house and my life within it finally crumbled to dust. His words struck me with the force of a physical blow. For months, I had been a silent sponge, absorbing their dysfunction, their cruelty, their blame. But there is a limit to what a soul can endure, and I had reached mine. You dare say that to me? I said, my voice dangerously low. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard anger. You, who has done nothing for this family. You, who spends your days and nights wasting money on alcohol and women. You, who contributes nothing but shame and disappointment. And you have the audacity to blame me for your family's problems? You are not just useless, Julian. You are a coward. I paused, taking a breath, my eyes locking with his. Then I turned my gaze to Eleanor. And you, Eleanor, I said, my voice ringing with a strength I didn't know I possessed. For months, I have respected you. I have obeyed you. I have done everything you've asked of me without a single word of complaint. But I see now that your way of doing business is reckless. Your investment groups, your high-interest loans. It's a house of cards. If your borrowers decide not to pay, you have no legal recourse. You should focus on the legitimate family business. You and Richard, and Julian and I, we can work there. We can help you rebuild. Properly, I had laid it all bare. All the thoughts I had kept locked away. All the observations I had made in silence. I was offering a solution, a way out of the mess they had created. I was offering to help, to be a true partner in this family. But they didn't see a partner. They saw an insurrection. Eleanor stared at me, her face a mask of disbelief, her lips curled into a sneer. Well, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. The little mouse has found her roar. How dare you lecture me? You think you can just waltz in here and tell me how to run my life? You ungrateful little viper. Julian, seeing his mother's reaction, seized the opportunity to add fuel to the fire. See, Mom, I told you, she's not as innocent as she looks, and you want to know the real kicker. He leaned in conspiratorially, his voice dropping. I have a confession to make. Since the day we were married, I haven't touched her. Not once. I swear on my life. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a silence so profound, so heavy. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Eleanor's eyes widened, her gaze snapping from her son to me, a slow, dawning horror on her face. What? She whispered, the word barely audible. What did you just say? Julian stood up straight, a smug, triumphant look on his face. He even raised 2 fingers in a mock Boy Scout pledge. It's the truth, I swear. If I have laid a single finger on her since our wedding day, may I drop dead right here. I stood there, frozen, as his words hung in the air like a death sentence. The secret was out. The foundation of our sham marriage had been ripped away, exposing the hollow, rotten core beneath. I felt a strange, light-headed sense of release. That's true, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. He hasn't, and for that, I am grateful. Slap, the sound was like a gunshot in the silent room. My head snapped to the side, my cheek exploding with a white-hot, searing pain. Eleanor stood before me, her hand raised, her chest heaving, her eyes blazing with a fury that was almost inhuman. You ungrateful wretch, she shrieked, her voice cracking. So that's it? You see that this family is in trouble, and you think you can just walk away? You think you can just discard us like trash? Is that why you're so happy? Let me tell you something. You are a Vance. You are my daughter-in-law. It doesn't matter how my son treats you. You will stay here. You will endure it. And if you even think about leaving, I will send people after you and your mother. I will ruin you both. Do you understand me? The pain on my cheek was nothing compared to the pain in my heart. She hadn't heard a word I'd said. She hadn't heard my offer to help, my plea for them to change. All she had heard was a threat. All she had seen was a possession trying to escape. This wasn't a family. It was a prison. And then the front door opened again. Richard walked in, his face etched with a weary exhaustion from his day. He stopped dead, taking in the scene before him. The shattered porcelain, Eleanor's apoplectic rage, Julian's smug satisfaction, and me, standing there with a bright red handprint blooming on my cheek. What in God's name is going on in here? He boomed, his voice a thunderclap of authority that cut through the tension. He dropped his briefcase on the floor with a heavy thud. Are you two ganging up on her again? My God, the girl is a saint. and you treat her like a dog. And you, Julian." He rounded on his son, his face a mask of pure disgust. "I can't believe you would treat your own wife with such contempt." Julian, for the first time, looked cowed. "It's not my fault, Dad," he mumbled. "I never wanted to marry her in the first place. It was Mom's idea, with all her superstitious nonsense." Eleanor whirled on him. "My idea? Your father was the one who said you needed a dragon to save you. He was the one who went along with it." "Because you're a tyrant, Eleanor," Richard roared, his voice cracking with a pain that went far beyond the present moment. "You've always been a tyrant. This family is the way it is because of you." He clutched his chest, a sudden coughing fit seizing him. He stumbled, gasping for breath. I rushed to his side, my own pain forgotten. I helped him to a chair, my heart pounding with a new fear. "Richard, are you okay?" He waved a dismissive hand, still coughing. Julian and Eleanor stood frozen, their argument forgotten in the face of this sudden medical crisis. The raw, ugly truth of their family had been laid bare, and it had almost broken the one decent person among them. The air was thick with unspoken words, with years of resentment and regret. Just then, Maria appeared in the doorway, her face pale. She had clearly heard the shouting. The dinner is ready," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I've set the table." The mundane announcement was so jarringly out of place. It was almost surreal. Eleanor, still breathing heavily, seemed to remember something. She turned her icy gaze on Maria. "Maria," she said, her voice cold and decisive, "I've been meaning to talk to you. You've been with this family for 10 years now, and we're grateful, but things are difficult right now. We need to cut back on expenses." She opened her purse, pulled out a wad of cash, and held it out. "This is your salary for this month, and next month's as well. I'm afraid we have to let you go." Maria stared at the money, her face a mixture of shock and disbelief. Her hands trembled as she took it. "Mrs. Vance, I don't understand." "It's simple," Eleanor said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Now that Lucy is here, we no longer require your services. The two of us can manage the household on our own. I trust you understand." Maria looked at me, her eyes filled with a terrible pity. She knew what this meant. She was being dismissed, and I was being officially demoted from daughter-in-law to unpaid maid. My only ally in this house was being sent away. "Yes, Mrs. Vance," Maria said, her voice a whisper. "I understand." She turned to the rest of us, her dignity a fragile cloak around her. "Then, please, enjoy the meal. It will be the last one I prepare for you. I'll just pack my things." Eleanor nodded, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. She then turned to the rest of us, her voice brisk and businesslike, as if the preceding emotional carnage had never happened. "Well, let's not let a good meal go to waste. Julian, after dinner, you will drive Maria to the bus station. And Lucy?" She pinned me with her cold, hard gaze. "After you've eaten, you will go back to those other 5 houses, and you will collect my money. I don't care what you have to do. Don't come back until you have it. Is that clear?" "Yes, Eleanor," I said, my voice a dead, hollow echo of itself. "Perfectly clear." Later that evening, after a silent, suffocating dinner, I helped Maria with her bags. We stood at the front door, the air thick with unspoken goodbyes. "Be careful, child," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "I will," I said. Then she was gone. I put on my coat, grabbed my purse, and walked out into the cold, dark night. I got into the small, second-hand car Julian had taught me to drive. and headed out to do my mother-in-law's bidding. I felt a strange sense of calm. The worst had happened. I had nothing left to lose. I was driving down a poorly lit side street after collecting the last of the money when it happened. A motorcycle pulled up alongside me, its engine a low, menacing growl. Before I could react, the passenger kicked my car door hard. The impact sent the car swerving. At the same time, another hand smashed my passenger side window, reached in, and snatched my purse from the seat. They hit the gas, their laughter a cruel, mocking sound that faded into the night. My car spun out, hopping the curb and slamming into a lamppost. The world exploded in a shower of glass and a sickening crunch of metal. Everything went black. When I came to, my head was throbbing, and my arm was screaming in pain. I stumbled out of the car, dazed and disoriented. My purse, with all of Eleanor's money, was gone. I was alone, on a dark street. My car, a wreck. I tried to call for help, but my voice was a weak, hoarse croak. No one stopped. Cars just slowed down, their occupants gawking at the wreckage before speeding away. I was about to collapse when a figure came running towards me. A man. He reached me just as my knees buckled, catching me in his arms, holding me steady. And then I smelled it. A faint, familiar scent of coffee and clean laundry. A scent from another lifetime. I looked up, my vision swimming, and I saw his face. A face I had seen every night in my dreams for the past year. A face I thought I would never see again. My lips formed his name, but no sound came out. It couldn't be. It was impossible. "Lucy," he whispered, his voice thick with a disbelief that mirrored my own. His arms tightened around me, his touch a ghost of a memory. "My God, Lucy, is that you?" Matthew. It was Matthew. He had been walking home from his shift at the hospital, a sprawling complex just a few blocks away. He was trying to clear his head after a long, grueling day. His father had suffered a major stroke, a turn for the worse that had forced them to transfer him to this specialized facility in the city. Matthew had taken a leave of absence from medical school to be here, to be with him. He had seen the crash from a distance, heard the sickening crunch of metal, and his instincts had kicked in. He ran, not as a former lover, but as a future doctor, ready to render aid. And then he saw my face. Time seemed to warp and bend. His heart, he told me later, felt like it had stopped beating entirely. There, in his arms, bruised and bleeding, was the girl who still owned every corner of his soul. Her face, the one he had memorized and cherished, was now pale and drawn, a landscape of quiet suffering. And there, on her cheek, was the faint, yellowing shadow of a bruise, a brutal testament to a pain he couldn't comprehend. In that moment, all the love he had tried to suppress, all the hurt and confusion he had felt over the past year, it all came rushing back, a tidal wave of emotion that threatened to drown him. He held me, his grip tightening as if he was afraid I might vanish. His voice was a low, ragged whisper against my hair. "Lucy, what happened to you? What in God's name happened?" I looked up at him, my mind struggling to bridge the gap between the past and this impossible present. The shock was a thick fog, but through it, 1,000 memories bloomed. His smile, the warmth of his hand, the promise whispered on a cold Pennsylvania morning. It was all too much. I pushed away from him, stumbling back a step. The sudden proximity to him, to everything I had lost, was overwhelming. The wind whipped a strand of hair across my face, and the city lights blurred through the tears that had begun to fall. We just stood there, two ghosts from another lifetime, staring at each other across an impassable chasm of time and circumstance. He could see the exhaustion etched onto my features, the hollowness in my eyes. He knew, with a certainty that felt like a knife twisting in his gut, that my marriage had not brought me happiness. And in that moment, a fierce, protective rage ignited within him. He would get me back. He would tear me away from whatever life had done this to me. After a long, charged silence, he helped me pull my wrecked car to the side of the road. He gently examined the cut on my arm, his touch professional yet achingly familiar. "It's not too deep," he said, his voice carefully neutral. He finally looked at me, his eyes full of questions I couldn't answer. "When did you get back?" "Get back?" I asked, confused. I came back a few days ago," he said, his voice low. "My dad. He had a stroke. We had to move him here." He paused. "What were you doing out here so late, Lucy? Where is your husband?" The question hung in the air, heavy and sharp. I couldn't look at him. I stared at the ground, at the glittering shards of my shattered window. "I was collecting money for my mother-in-law," I mumbled. "There was a robbery. They took my purse." I couldn't bring myself to explain the rest. I couldn't tell him that my husband was a man who despised me, who wouldn't care if I lived or died. He's busy with other things." "How did you know?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "How did you know I was married?" A bitter, humorless smile touched his lips. "Your mother told my mother, and my mother called me the day after I arrived at school. She told me the girl who promised to wait for me had married into a rich, powerful family." His voice was laced with a pain he couldn't hide. "You never forgot your promise, did you, Lucy? The one we made the day I left?" His words were not an accusation, but they felt like one. They were a reminder of the girl I used to be, the future I had thrown away. The guilt, the shame, the regret, it all came crashing down on me. I couldn't hold it in any longer. The tears came, hot and fast. "I'm sorry," I choked out, the words a ragged tear in my throat. "Matthew, I am so sorry. Do you hate me?" He looked at me then, his expression softening. He saw the bruise on my cheek, the raw pain in my eyes, the tremble in my lips, and all the anger, all the resentment he had harbored for a year. It all melted away, replaced by an overwhelming wave of love and compassion. He reached out, his thumb gently brushing a tear from my cheek. "No, Lucy," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't hate you. I could never hate you." He took a step closer, his voice dropping to an intense murmur. "Seeing you like this, it makes me love you even more. It makes me want to protect you." His words, his touch, his presence, it was a balm on my wounded soul. For a year, I had been starved of kindness, of affection, and here it was, a feast laid before me. I leaned into his touch, my eyes closing, a sob escaping my lips. I felt a warmth spread through my chest, a feeling I had forgotten existed. "Stop crying, Lucy," he whispered, his voice a gentle caress. "I'm here now." His tenderness was my undoing. I felt myself begin to crumble, to fall apart in the safety of his arms. "And who do we have here?" The voice was like a bucket of ice water. It was shrill, sharp, and dripping with venom. Eleanor. She was marching towards us, her face a mask of fury, a small, decorative umbrella swinging menacingly in her hand. She must have gotten worried when I didn't return and come looking for me. She ignored the wrecked car, ignored my disheveled state. Her eyes were fixed on the sight of me in Matthew's arms. Well, Lucy," she spat, her voice laced with a triumphant cruelty. Where's the money? Don't tell me you couldn't collect it. The abrupt shift from Matthew's gentle concern to Eleanor's brutal interrogation gave me whiplash. I pulled away from him, my body trembling, my voice a panicked stammer. Eleanor, I. She didn't let me finish. You what? You failed? I knew it. I knew you were useless. That's not it, I cried out, my voice rising with desperation. The money. I had it, but I was robbed. They crashed my car. They took everything. Eleanor's face went white with rage. Robbed? She shrieked, her voice echoing in the quiet street. You expect me to believe that? You lying, pathetic little snake. She raised her hand, and for a second, I thought she was going to strike me again. My blood ran cold. The word useless echoed in my ears. It was the same word Julian had used, a family curse they branded me with. Don't you touch her. Matthew's voice was low, but it held a steely authority that made Eleanor freeze. He stepped in front of me, shielding me with his body, his eyes blazing with a protective fire. That's enough, he said, his voice cold and hard. This woman was just in a car accident. She was assaulted. She could have been killed. And all you care about is your money? What kind of monster are you? Eleanor was momentarily stunned by his defiance. She recovered quickly, her eyes narrowing to slits. And who the hell are you? She sneered, her knight in shining armor. You think you can just show up and lecture me? Money is what matters. Without it, you're nothing. We were standing in the middle of the street, the three of us locked in a tense, ugly standoff. I grabbed Matthew's arm, my voice a pleading whisper. Matthew, please, just let it go. It's not worth it. He looked down at me, his face a mask of frustration and disbelief. Lucy, why do you let them treat you like this? Why do you stay? Eleanor cackled, a harsh, ugly sound. Oh, so you two know each other? Is that it? You have a secret lover on the side? The accusation was so vile, so far from the truth, that I had to defend myself. No, I cried out, stepping forward. That's not it at all. This is Matthew. We grew up together in the same town. He's here because his father is sick in the hospital. It was just a coincidence that we met. Eleanor wasn't buying it. A coincidence? She said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. He looks at you with more love than my son ever has. A coincidence? My ass. Matthew had had enough. What is wrong with you? He exploded, his voice ringing with righteous anger. Your daughter-in-law was just in a violent accident, and you stand here accusing her of infidelity? You are the most heartless woman I have ever met. You dare talk to me like that? She shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at him. You think you can defend her? Fine, take her. Get her out of my sight. I'll go home and I will tell my son, Julian, everything. I'll tell him how I found his wife in the arms of another man. We'll see how he deals with the two of you. And with that, she turned on her heel and stormed off into the night, leaving a trail of poisonous fury in her wake. The silence she left behind was heavy and suffocating. I looked at Matthew, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. You should go, I whispered. She's going to make things worse. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a deep, aching sadness. And you're just gonna go back to them? After this? Lucy, why? I smiled, a bitter, humorless twist of my lips. Because I owe them, I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. They paid a price for me, Matthew. $20,000, a price that saved my mother's life. So no matter how they treat me, no matter what they do to me, I have to stay. I have to pay my debt. I turned and walked back to my wrecked car, my movements stiff and robotic. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I looked back, if I saw the love and the pity in his eyes one more time, I would break. And I couldn't afford to break. I had a debt to pay, and the price, I was beginning to realize, was my own soul. Matthew stood there, watching me go, his heart shattering into a million pieces. He hadn't just found the girl he loved. He had found her trapped in a living hell, and he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that he couldn't just walk away. He couldn't leave me there. He had to find a way to save me. The walk home was a blur. My body ached, my head throbbed, and my heart was a cold, heavy stone in my chest. Each step was an act of will, a forced march back to the front lines of a war I was losing. When I finally pushed open the heavy oak door, Julian was waiting for me in the foyer. He was pacing back and forth like a caged animal, his face a mask of thunderous rage. He stopped dead when he saw me, his eyes raking over my disheveled appearance, my torn clothes, the fresh cut on my arm. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask what had happened. His first words were an accusation. "So, you finally decided to crawl back home, did you?" He sneered, his voice dripping with venom. "You've got a lot of nerve, and a fantastic lover, I hear. So, when are you packing your bags and running off with him?" I stared at him, my exhaustion momentarily forgotten, replaced by a weary disbelief. His mother had wasted no time. She had taken the spark of a misunderstanding and fanned it into a raging inferno, and he had eagerly danced in the flames. I was too tired to fight, too tired to explain. I just shook my head and started to walk past him, towards the stairs, towards the relative peace of my cot on the floor. But he wasn't finished. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into the bruised flesh, and spun me around to face him. "I'm talking to you," he snarled, his face inches from mine. "Don't you dare walk away from me. Don't you think for a second that your silence makes you look innocent. It just makes you look guilty." His arrogance, his utter lack of concern for my well-being, his blind acceptance of his mother's poisonous lies. It was all too much. Something inside me, something that had been dormant for a year, finally woke up. It was a cold, hard rage, and it was beautiful in its clarity. I met his gaze, my eyes unflinching. A small, bitter smile touched my lips. "You want me to talk?" I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Fine, let's talk." Slap. The blow was so sudden, so violent, it rocked me back on my heels. My cheek exploded with a familiar, searing pain. But this time, I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just stood there, my head tilted to the side, the taste of blood in my mouth. And then, with a speed and a strength I didn't know I possessed, I swung my own hand. It connected with his cheek with a satisfying crack, the sound echoing in the silent, cavernous foyer. I hit him so hard, my own palm stung. He stared at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and disbelief. He touched his cheek as if to make sure it was real. No one had ever dared to strike him before. "I have tolerated your mother's abuse because I failed in my duty to her," I said, my voice as cold and sharp as ice. "I lost her money. So, I will accept her punishment, but you?" I took a step closer, my eyes blazing with a year's worth of suppressed fury. "You have done nothing for this family. You have done nothing for me. You have no right to touch me. You have no right to judge me. And you have no right to question me. So let me make this perfectly clear. From this moment on, for every time you lay a hand on me, I will hit you back. I am done being your punching bag." His shock quickly morphed into a rabid, uncontrollable rage. He was like a cornered animal, his pride wounded, his authority challenged. He lunged at me, his hands reaching for my throat, a guttural roar ripping from his chest. "You bitch. I'll kill you." But just as his fingers closed around the collar of my shirt, a voice boomed from the top of the stairs. "That's enough." It was Richard. He was standing on the landing, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. In his hand, he held a heavy, antique walking stick that he sometimes used when his arthritis flared up. "Are you and your mother trying to torment this girl to death?" he roared, his voice cracking with a rage that seemed to shake the very foundations of the house. "She is a good, kind, decent human being, and you treat her like an animal. And you, Julian, you dare to raise a hand to your own wife? I don't think so." He descended the stairs with a speed that belied his age, the walking stick held aloft like a weapon. Julian, for the first time in his life, looked genuinely afraid. "Dad, you don't understand," he stammered, letting go of my shirt. She was with another man. Mom saw her." "I don't care what my wife thinks she saw," Richard bellowed. "I care about what I am seeing right now. And I am seeing my son, a man I raised, acting like a common thug." He reached the bottom of the stairs and swung the cane. It connected with Julian's back with a sickening thud. Julian cried out, stumbling forward. "Before you presume to discipline your wife, Julian," Richard said, his voice a low, dangerous growl, "let this old man discipline you." He swung again and again. The heavy wood of the cane fell on Julian's shoulders, his back, his legs. Julian tried to dodge, to shield himself, but his father was relentless, his movements fueled by years of pent-up frustration and disappointment. Eleanor came running from the living room, drawn by the sounds of the struggle. "Richard, stop!" she screamed, her face pale with terror. "What are you doing? You'll kill him." Richard turned his blazing eyes on her. "Good," he roared. "I would rather he be dead than live as the coward he has become. You and your coddling, you and your superstitions, you have created this monster. Now get out of my way." He raised the cane again. Julian was cowering now, his arms over his head, whimpering like a child. He was looking at his mother, pleading with his eyes for her to save him. And in that moment, I saw not a monster, but a broken boy. A boy who had been twisted and warped by the very people who should have loved him most. And I couldn't watch anymore. "Stop!" I cried out, my voice ringing with a desperate urgency. Before anyone could react, I ran forward. I threw myself in front of Julian, wrapping my arms around him, shielding his body with my own. The cane was already in mid-swing. I braced myself for the impact. It came a second later, a blinding, white-hot explosion of pain across my back. I cried out, my body arching in agony, but I didn't let go. I held on to him, my face pressed against his chest, my body a human shield. "Dad, please, stop!" I sobbed, the words muffled against his shirt. "You have to stop. You'll kill him." Richard froze, the cane held aloft. He stared at me, his face a mask of horror and disbelief. The walking stick fell from his nerveless fingers, clattering onto the marble floor. "Lucy, my child, get out of the way," he said, his voice a ragged whisper. "He doesn't deserve your protection." I looked up at him, my vision swimming with tears of pain. "He is still your son," I said, my voice trembling. "And he is. He is my husband. Please, no more." Julian was rigid in my arms. He was completely still, his body trembling slightly. I could feel the frantic, rabbit-like beat of his heart against my cheek. For the first time, I had not been his victim, but his protector. For the first time, Someone had chosen to take a blow meant for him, and in the silent, charged aftermath of the violence, I could feel it, a subtle shift in the air, a crack in the armor of his arrogance, a flicker of something new, something fragile, something that might, just might, be the beginning of a change. I loosened my grip, pushing him gently towards the door. "Go," I whispered, my voice urgent. "Just go. Get out of here before he changes his mind." He looked at me, his eyes wide with a confusion he couldn't hide. Then he looked at his father, who was slumping against the banister, his face ashen. He looked at his mother, who was standing frozen, her hand over her mouth. And then, for the first time since I had met him, he listened. He turned and ran, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the silent, broken house. Just as the front door slammed shut, the telephone began to ring, its shrill, insistent cry a jarring intrusion into the fragile peace. The sound seemed to break the spell. Richard collapsed onto the bottom step, his head in his hands. Eleanor, her face a mask of shock, walked mechanically to the phone and picked it up. I watched her, my back a landscape of fire, my heart a dull, throbbing ache. I saw her face go from pale to a ghostly white. I saw her hand tremble, the receiver nearly slipping from her grasp. I saw her knees buckle. I rushed to her side, catching her just before she fell, and helped her into a chair. "Eleanor, what is it?" I asked, my voice filled with a new dread. "What's wrong?" She stared at me, her eyes wide and unfocused, filled with a terror that was far greater than anything I had seen before. "The bank," she whispered, her voice a reedy, fragile thing. "They called from the bank. The house. They're foreclosing on the house. We have 3 days to get out." The words hung in the air, a death sentence for the life they had known. The house, this monument to their wealth and status, was being ripped out from under them. I helped Eleanor into a chair, my own pain, a distant echo in the face of this new, catastrophic reality. I quickly went to the kitchen and brewed a pot of chamomile tea, my movements automatic. By the time I returned, Eleanor had found her voice, a fragile, trembling thing, thick with unshed tears. "Richard," she began, her gaze fixed on her husband, who was still sitting slumped on the stairs. I have to confess something. All these years, I lied to you." Richard looked up, his face a gray mask of exhaustion. "Lied about what, Eleanor?" "The profits from the company," she whispered, the words tumbling out in a frantic, desperate rush. I was taking some of it, skimming it. I was using it to play the lottery, to make high-risk investments, to fund my lending circles. I thought I could make us more. I thought I could be smarter than the market. But the loans, they all defaulted. And the lottery, I just kept losing. I took out a second mortgage on the house to cover the losses. I was going to win it all back, but I couldn't. She finally broke, her face crumpling as she buried it in her hands, her shoulders shaking with ragged sobs. And now the bank is calling. "We have nothing left, Richard. It's all gone." Richard listened to her confession, his expression unreadable. The anger seemed to have drained out of him, replaced by a profound, bone-deep weariness. He didn't shout. He didn't rage. He just sighed, a long, rattling exhalation that seemed to carry the weight of his entire life. "I was a fool," he said, his voice a low, gravelly murmur. "For years, my health has been failing. I handed the reins of this family over to you, Eleanor. I trusted you. I believed you were running our lives with integrity. And all this time, you were gambling it away." He looked up, his eyes filled not with anger, but with a deep, haunting sadness. Perhaps this is my karma, my punishment for what I did all those years ago. If I had just been stronger, is less than #0. 3# is greater than if I had just fought to keep her. His voice trailed off, but the unspoken name hung heavy in the air between them. Laura, Matthew's mother. Eleanor's head snapped up, her grief momentarily forgotten, replaced by a familiar, sharp-edged jealousy. "Don't you dare," she hissed, her eyes narrowing. "Don't you dare bring her up now. After all these years, you're still thinking of her? So that's it? You regret your life with me? With our son? Regret?" Richard said, a bitter, humorless laugh escaping his lips. "What good would regret do now, Eleanor? We've been together for over 20 years. The choices were made long ago." He looked at her, his gaze clear and unflinching. "But yes, I will say it. This family is in ruins because of your greed. So don't you dare try to shift the blame." "So, you are blaming me," she cried, her voice rising with a familiar hysteria. "Fine. I'll just die. Then you'll be happy." I had been standing in the shadows of the doorway, a silent witness to the complete implosion of their lives. I had heard Richard mention this other woman before, a ghost from a past I didn't understand. Now, the pieces were beginning to fall into place. Seeing that their argument was subsiding into a stalemate of bitter resentment, I stepped forward, placing the tray of tea on the table. "Please," I said softly, my voice a quiet anchor in the stormy sea of their emotions. "Drink some tea. It will help you calm down." I turned to Eleanor, my voice gentle but firm. "This is not the time for fighting. This is the time to find a solution. We will get through this, together, as a family." Eleanor looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. For the first time since I had met her, the mask of arrogance and disdain had fallen away, and I saw the scared, vulnerable woman beneath. She reached out, her hand trembling, and clasped mine. "Thank you, Lucy," she whispered, her voice thick with a genuine, raw gratitude that startled me. "In all of this, you are the only one." Her voice broke, and she couldn't finish. Richard, seeing this small moment of connection between us, seemed to find a new resolve. He stood up, his back a little straighter. "She's right, Eleanor. We need a plan." Eleanor took a deep, shuddering breath, composing herself. I have been preparing for this possibility," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I knew this day might come. I rented a small house across the river. It's not much, but it's a place to live." "Then we'll go there," Richard said, his voice decisive. "We'll sell what's left of the company, pay off as much debt as we can, and we'll start over." He looked at me. "Lucy, your mother-in-law and I will go now. We'll get things settled. You stay here. Wait for Julian to come back. Pack what you both need, and then join us. The bank won't bother you. You're not on any of the paperwork." Eleanor quickly scribbled an address on a piece of paper and handed it to me. Then, with a final, lingering look at the house that had been their kingdom, they walked out the door, leaving me alone in the cavernous, silent tomb of their former lives. I spent the rest of the day in a daze. The house, once so imposing, now felt like a hollow shell, echoing with the ghosts of arguments and bitter regrets. Julian didn't come home that night. He didn't come home the next morning. It was late the following afternoon when he finally stumbled through the door. He was a wreck. His expensive clothes were rumpled and stained. His hair was a mess, and he reeked of cheap perfume and stale whiskey. He was muttering to himself, his voice thick and slurred. "Holly. Why'd you leave me, Holly? Was it the money? Did you leave me for that old bastard because he had more money?" He was so drunk, he didn't even seem to recognize me. He stumbled towards me, his eyes unfocused. "Come on, baby," he slurred, trying to wrap his arms around me. "Let's go somewhere." "You still love me, right, Holly?" I felt a surge of pity and disgust. He was pathetic, a broken man-child, crying over a prostitute who had likely moved on to a client with a thicker wallet. I grabbed his arm, my grip surprisingly strong, and hauled him towards our room. "Come on," I said, my voice hard. "Let's go find Holly." I dragged him into the bathroom, locked the door, and filled a bucket with icy cold water from the shower. Then, without a word, I dumped it over his head. He sputtered and gasped, the shock of the cold water momentarily sobering him up. He shook his head, water flying everywhere, and glared at me, his eyes slowly focusing. "Lucy," he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "What the hell do you think you're doing? I am your husband. Do you have a death wish?" I just stood there, my arms crossed, an ironic smile on my face. "A husband?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Is that what you call yourself? You spend your days getting drunk with women named Holly, and then you come home and cry about it when they leave you for a richer man. Is that what a husband does? And you have the nerve to be angry at me?" His face flushed with a mixture of anger and shame. He knew I was right. His pathetic display had been witnessed, and his pride was stung. "What about you?" He shot back, trying to deflect. "What's your excuse? Why are you still here? Don't you have a lover to run off to?" "My lover?" I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "You mean the man who found me bleeding on the side of the road after I was robbed of your mother's money? The man who showed me more kindness in 5 minutes than you have in an entire year? Is that the lover you're talking about?" He flinched as if I had struck him. He had no defense. He just stood there, dripping and defeated. "And while you've been out drowning your sorrows over a woman who doesn't give a damn about you," I continued, my voice relentless, "did you ever once stop to think about your parents? Did you ever wonder where they are?" He looked around the silent, empty house, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. "They're not here?" he said, his voice small. "Where did they go?" I sat down on the edge of the bathtub, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a weary sadness. "Julian," I said, my voice softening, "we have to move. Today. This house, it doesn't belong to us anymore." He stared at me, his face a mask of disbelief. What are you talking about?" And so I told him. I told him everything about the defaulted loans, the gambling debts, the second mortgage. I told him that his family's fortune was gone, that their empire had crumbled to dust, and that all they had left was a small, rented house across the river. I watched as the color drained from his face. I watched as the arrogant, cocky facade he had worn his entire life cracked and fell away, revealing the terrified, lost boy beneath. He sank to the floor, his head in his hands, and for the first time since I had met him, he began to cry. Not the drunken, self-pitying tears I had seen before, but the raw, ragged sobs of a man who had lost everything. He began to slam his head against the tiled wall, a rhythmic, sickening thud. "I'm useless," he sobbed. "A failure. I should just die." I rushed to his side, grabbing his head, forcing him to stop. I slapped him, hard, across the face. "Stop it," I commanded, my voice sharp and clear. "Before you die, you're going to listen to me. Your parents are waiting for you. They are heartbroken, and they are scared, and they need their son. If you die now, you will be the most selfish, most cowardly, most ungrateful son who has ever lived. Is that what you want? He looked at me, his eyes wide and lost, shimmering with unshed tears. The fight was gone. The arrogance was gone. All that was left was a raw, aching vulnerability. If we have nothing left, he whispered, his voice a fragile, broken thing, will you still stay? It was the first time he had ever asked me for anything, the first time he had ever shown even a flicker of need. And in that moment, my heart, which I thought had turned to stone, felt a strange, unexpected twinge of compassion. I didn't answer him directly. I just stood up and turned to leave. When I need to go, I said, my voice quiet, I'll go. But not today. I left him there, on the cold bathroom floor, and began the long, arduous task of packing up the wreckage of their lives. And for the rest of the day, he followed me, a silent, ghost-like shadow. He didn't speak, he just helped. He lifted heavy boxes. He wrapped fragile heirlooms. He worked, for the first time in his life, with a quiet, desperate focus. And as I watched him, his expensive shirt stained with sweat, his face etched with a newfound gravity, I saw him, not the monster, not the boy, but the man he could have been, the man he might still become. The new house was a world away from the mansion. It was a small, 2-bedroom bungalow nestled in a quiet, working-class neighborhood with a tiny patch of grass for a yard and a view of the river from the back porch. The air smelled of damp earth and distant industry. To them, it was a prison, a public humiliation. To me, it felt more like home than the grand, empty mausoleum we had left behind. And slowly, miraculously, something began to change. Stripped of their wealth and status, the Vances were forced to become something they had never been before. A family. The constant, simmering tension was replaced by a shared sense of purpose. We were all in this together, and for the first time, I felt like a part of the we. Richard and Eleanor, humbled by their fall from grace, treated me with a newfound respect, and even a quiet affection. And Julian was a different person. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a quiet, determined gravity. He sold his designer clothes and his sports car, and with the money, he bought a used, beat-up sedan. He started driving for a ride-sharing service, working long, grueling hours, coming home exhausted, but with a look of quiet pride on his face. He was no longer the parasitic boy. He was becoming a man. He was still quiet around me. The chasm between us, carved by a year of cruelty and neglect, was too wide to be bridged easily. But the open hostility was gone. He would ask if I was tired. He would thank me for dinner. Small things, but they were a start. His parents opened a small convenience store in the front room of the house, selling cigarettes and candy and lottery tickets to the neighborhood. And I found a job at a local pharmacy, my quiet competence and gentle demeanor making me a favorite with the elderly customers. We were all working, we were all contributing, and for the first time, there was a fragile, tentative peace in the house. After a few months, when I felt that things had finally stabilized, I asked for permission to go home and visit my mother. This time, there was no hesitation. Eleanor not only agreed, but insisted on packing a large box of sweets and gifts for me to take. She even suggested that Julian go with me, but he politely declined. I saw the shame in his eyes. He wasn't ready to face my mother yet. He wasn't ready to apologize for the man he had been. I understood. And so, I went alone. The bus ride back to Havenwood felt like a journey back in time. As I stepped off the bus and walked down the familiar, dusty road, the neighbors stared. They saw my simple clothes, my lack of luggage, the fact that I was alone. Their whispers followed me down the lane, a chorus of pity and scorn. I heard snippets. Married a rich man, and look at her now. Must have been kicked out. Poor girl. I just smiled, a small, secret smile, and kept walking. They didn't know, they couldn't possibly understand. Our little shack had been transformed. The leaky roof had been replaced, the rotting porch repaired, a fresh coat of paint brightening the weathered wood. My mother, it seemed, had used the money wisely. I found her inside, curled up on her old cot, a series of dry, racking coughs shaking her thin frame. The damp, rainy weather had aggravated her condition. "Mom," I said softly from the doorway. She turned, and when she saw me, her face lit up with a joy so pure, so radiant, it took my breath away. "Lucy," she cried, her voice thick with tears. "You're home." She struggled to sit up, and I rushed to her side, pulling her into a fierce hug. "Julian, did he come with you?" she asked, her eyes searching the doorway behind me. "No, Mom," I said, helping her to a comfortable position. He had to work. We've moved, Mom. The big house is gone." And so I told her everything about the bankruptcy, the new house, the new jobs. I told her about Julian's transformation, about the fragile peace that had settled over our new life. She listened, her face a mixture of shock and a deep, aching pity. "Oh, my poor child," she said, her hand clutching mine. "You have suffered so much." "It's okay, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "It really is. The big house was a prison. This new life, it's harder, but it's better. I couldn't leave them, Mom. Not when they needed me most." She nodded, her eyes shining with a fierce, maternal pride. "You did the right thing, my child. You are a good, loyal wife." She squeezed my hand. "Now, you sit, rest. I'll go warm up some fish stew for our dinner." "No, Mom, let me," I insisted. "You're not well. You need to rest." "Nonsense," she said, a spark of her old fire in her eyes. "I'm fine. Besides, I haven't been alone. Laura, Matthew's mother, and Matthew himself, they've been coming by almost every day. They've been a great help to me. Now you go and light a candle for your father. I'll handle the kitchen." Her words sent a jolt through me. Matthew, he had been here. He had been helping my mother. A wave of complicated emotions washed over me. Gratitude, guilt, and a deep, resonant ache for what might have been. This man, whom I had been forced to abandon, was still, in his own quiet way, taking care of me. I went to the small, makeshift altar in the corner of the room and lit a stick of incense for my father. As the fragrant smoke curled into the air, I heard a familiar voice from the doorway. "Sarah, are you feeling any better today? I brought you some more of that herbal medicine." I turned, and my heart stopped. It was Matthew. He was standing in the doorway, a small paper bag in his hand, his eyes wide with a surprise that mirrored my own. The air in the small room was suddenly thick with unspoken words, with the ghosts of shared memories. He was the first to break the silence. "Lucy," he said, his voice a little hoarse, "when did you get back?" "Just now," I managed to say, my own voice barely a whisper. "My mother. She told me you've been helping her. Thank you." He smiled, a small, sad twist of his lips. "It was nothing. I think of your mother as my own. You were busy. I was here. It was the least I could do." "Matthew, I started not knowing what to say. "Don't," he said gently. "Don't thank me. It makes things awkward." He looked at me, his gaze so intense it felt like he was seeing right through me, into the deepest, most hidden corners of my heart. I had to look away. I'll go make some tea, I stammered, turning to escape, to put some distance between us. But as I turned, his hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was gentle but firm, an anchor in the swirling sea of my emotions. "Lucy," he said, his voice a low, intense murmur. "I'm still waiting for you." The words were a punch to the gut. I looked at him, at his handsome, earnest face, at the raw, undisguised love in his eyes, and my heart, which I thought had been irrevocably given to my new life, my new family, my new husband, betrayed me. It yearned for him. It ached for the simple, uncomplicated love we had once shared. I wanted, more than anything, to fall into his arms, to tell him everything, to let him hold me and tell me it would all be okay. But then, I looked around the small, clean room. I saw the new roof, the sturdy walls. I thought of my mother, safe and cared for. I thought of the Vances, who, for all their faults, had saved us from a life of crushing poverty. They had given me a home. They had given my mother a future. And Julian, he was trying. He was really, truly trying. I couldn't abandon them now. I couldn't be that person. Tears welled in my eyes. I gently but firmly pulled my hand from his grasp. "Matthew," I said, my voice thick with a sorrow that was almost too much to bear. "Please, forget me. I have a husband now." The pain in his eyes was a mirror of my own. He opened his mouth to say something else, but just then, my mother's footsteps creaked on the floorboards as she came back into the room. The moment was broken. He took a step back, his expression shuddering. He pushed the bag of medicine across the table towards me. I have to go," he said, his voice strained. "Give this to your mother, twice a day, with food." He looked at me one last time, his eyes full of a love that was now a torment. "And Lucy, no matter what you say, I will always love you." And then he was gone. I stood there, clutching the bag of herbs, my heart a battlefield of conflicting loyalties. My mother came and stood beside me, her hand a comforting weight on my shoulder. "He's a good boy," she said softly. "He told me everything. I'm proud of you, Lucy. You made the right choice." She then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, folded bundle of cash. "This is what's left of the money they gave us," she said, pushing it into my hand. "After the repairs, it's a few $1,000s. Your new family is struggling. You take this. You help them." "No, Mom," I protested, my voice thick with tears. "I can't. This is your security." "Nonsense," she said, her voice firm, a mock anger in her eyes. "This was your wedding money. It belongs to you. You take it. You help your husband. And when you two are back on your feet, you can pay me back with interest." I couldn't argue. I just fell into her arms, my body shaking with a fresh wave of sobs. "I'm sorry, Mom," I cried. "I'm so sorry you still have to worry about me." She held me tight, her hand stroking my hair. "Nonsense, my child," she whispered. "That's what mothers are for." I stayed with her for 2 days, 2 days of quiet companionship, of shared meals and unspoken understanding. And then, with a heavy heart and a small bundle of cash tucked safely in my purse, I got back on the bus and returned to my other life. My real life, the one I had chosen. Life settled into a new, more hopeful rhythm. I continued to work at the pharmacy, and my knack for customer service, my genuine warmth, made our little counter a local hub. Business was good. The money I'd brought back from my mother, combined with our collective earnings, was enough to ease the constant, gnawing anxiety about bills. We weren't rich, but we were surviving. We were building something new, together. One morning, Julian was driving his rideshare, circling the city streets for a fare, when he spotted a familiar figure walking out of a local market. It was Maria. He pulled over, a genuine, unforced smile on his face. "Maria," he called out, "what are you doing in this part of town?" She turned, startled, and then her face broke into a wide, happy grin. "Julian, my goodness, is that you?" "Don't call me Mr. Vance Jr. anymore," he said, a hint of his old teasing tone in his voice, but without the arrogant edge. "Our family, well, things are different now." I know, she said, her expression softening with sympathy. "I tried to visit a few times, but the old house was always locked up. How are your parents? Are they well?" "They're good," he said. We sold the mansion. We're living in a smaller place now, over by the river. They're doing okay." He paused. "What about you? What are you doing here?" "Oh, I found a new job," she said. "I'm a caregiver for an elderly gentleman who lives just around the corner." "Well, hop in," he said, gesturing to the passenger seat. "Let me give you a ride to the market, and I'll give you our new address. My mother, she misses you. She'd love for you to visit." She hesitated, but his sincerity was undeniable. This was not the arrogant, spoiled boy she had known. This was a man. She got in the car. On the short drive to the market, she tried to pay him for the ride, but he just laughed and refused, speeding away with a friendly wave. He picked up a few more fares, the morning sun warming the inside of his car. As noon approached, he found himself near the pharmacy where I worked. He hadn't planned it, but a sudden curiosity, a sudden urge took hold of him. He wanted to see me. He wanted to see how I was doing. He pulled over across the street, parking where he could watch without being seen. He saw me through the large plate glass window of the pharmacy. I was laughing. A customer, a young man about our age, was leaning on the counter, telling me a joke. I threw my head back, and a genuine, musical laugh escaped my lips. "You're too beautiful to be working in a place like this," the young man said, his voice carrying on the quiet afternoon air. "You have a husband?" He winked. "Tell you what, you give me a little peck on the cheek, and I'll buy this whole carton of cigarettes." It was the kind of casual, harmless flirting I had grown used to. I just smiled, a polite, professional smile, and shook my head. "Thank you for the compliment, sir," I said, my voice sweet but firm. "But the cigarettes will be $20. But Julian didn't see the professionalism. He didn't see the polite dismissal. He just saw me, his wife, smiling at another man. He saw another man trying to buy my affection, and something inside him, something primal and possessive, snapped. He was out of the car and across the street in a flash. He stormed into the pharmacy, snatched the carton of cigarettes from my hand, and threw it on the floor. "We're closed," he snarled, his voice a low, dangerous growl. He turned to the startled customer, his eyes blazing. He ripped the baseball cap from his own head and slammed it down on the counter with a loud crack. "Get out," he said, his voice shaking with a rage I had never seen before. "This is my wife, and you are not welcome here." The young man, seeing the murderous look in Julian's eyes, didn't need to be told twice. He backed away, his hands raised in surrender, and practically ran out of the pharmacy. I stared at Julian, my heart pounding, a mixture of fear and a strange, unfamiliar thrill churning in my stomach. "What was that?" I demanded, bending down to pick up the cigarettes. "Do you have any idea how much profit I make on a carton of cigarettes?" Are you trying to ruin my business? He leaned on the counter, his knuckles white, his chest heaving. Shut it down, he said, his voice a low growl. You're not working here anymore. Excuse me? I said, my eyes widening in disbelief. Why not? This job is helping to support your parents. You have no right to tell me what to do. I have every right, he roared, his voice echoing in the small, empty shop. Look at the kind of men who come in here. Drunks, flirts. What if one of them tried something? What if something happened to you? Nothing is going to happen to me. I shot back. I've been working here for months, and I've been perfectly fine. Not that you would know. You've never once bothered to come and see how I'm doing. That's because I trusted you, he yelled. And now I see what happens when I'm not here. You're just giving away your smiles, your laughter, to any man who walks in the door. What are you talking about? I said, completely bewildered by his outburst. You know what I'm talking about, he said, his voice dropping, laced with a pain that was raw and real. You are my wife, and you laugh with them. You smile at them with a sweetness you have never, not once, shown to me. They are luckier than I am. I just stared at him, my mouth agape. And then, a slow, dawning realization began to spread through me. It was so absurd, so completely out of character that I couldn't help it. I started to laugh. What are you laughing at? He demanded, his face flushing a deep, angry red. You think this is funny? Yes, I said, my laughter subsiding into a wide, incredulous grin. It is. You're jealous, aren't you? He just stared at me, his jaw tight, his eyes blazing. Don't be ridiculous. Oh, I don't think it's ridiculous at all, I teased. A playful, unfamiliar confidence bubbling up inside me. You're jealous. I can see it. Your face is all red. It's actually kinda cute. He was silent for a long, charged moment. He looked at me, really looked at me. He saw the way the afternoon sun caught the highlights in my hair, the way my eyes sparkled with a life he had never noticed before. He saw the strength, the resilience, the quiet beauty that he had been blind to for so long. And in that moment, the last of his defenses crumbled. He took a step closer, his movement slow and deliberate. He reached out, his hand hesitating for a moment before gently, tentatively, touching my cheek. His thumb stroked my skin, his touch a feather-like caress. Yes, he said, his voice a low, rough whisper that sent a shiver down my spine. I'm jealous. He leaned in closer, his lips just inches from my ear. I'm jealous when you smile at them. I'm jealous when they get to talk to you. And I get nothing. He pulled back, his eyes searching mine, a raw, aching vulnerability in their depths. Lucy, I think my heart is starting to beat for you, and it's a strange feeling. I hate it when you're not looking at me. Is this what love feels like? His words, his touch, the raw, undisguised emotion in his eyes. It was everything I had ever secretly, hopelessly wanted from him. A year ago, these words would have been the answer to all my prayers. I would have melted in his arms, but now it was more complicated. The wounds he had inflicted were deep. The scars were still tender, and the ghost of another man, a man who had loved me purely and selflessly, still lingered in the corners of my heart. I turned my head, gently pulling away from his touch. My life was simple before I met you, Julian, I said, my voice a quiet, sad whisper. You can't just say these things now. It's too late. He let his hand fall to his side, the rejection a physical blow. He knew he deserved it. He knew he had no right to ask for my forgiveness, for my love. "I know," he said, his voice thick with a regret that was raw and real. "I know I hurt you, Lucy. I know I was a monster. But I'm trying to change. For you, for my parents. Please, just give me a chance. A real chance." "I can't," I said, the words a painful lump in my throat. "You broke something in me, Julian. I was a wife without a husband. I spent a year sleeping on the floor, listening to you call out other women's names. I tried. I really did. I tried to forget my first love, to open my heart to you. But you didn't want it. You threw it back in my face. And now my heart is tired. It's just tired." The words hung in the air between us, a final, heartbreaking testament to the damage he had done. I turned away, pretending to straighten a display of candy, not wanting him to see the tears that were welling in my eyes. He stood there for a long, silent moment, the weight of his past actions crushing him. He knew he had lost me. He had had a treasure in his house for a year, and he had treated it like trash. And now, when he finally saw its worth, it was too late. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the pharmacy. The small bell above the door chimed, a lonely, mournful sound. I watched him go, a blur through my tear-filled eyes. He had changed. I could see that. But could I change? Could I learn to trust again? Could I learn to love the man who had so thoroughly, so completely broken my heart? I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. That evening, Julian didn't come home for dinner. He didn't come home at all. I told his parents he was working late, a lie to shield them from the truth of our fractured relationship. I spent the night on my cot, staring into the darkness, my heart a tangled mess of confusion and regret. The next day was a blur of work and quiet contemplation. I closed up the pharmacy late in the evening and was walking home when I ran into Maria. We walked together, the cool night air a welcome relief after the stuffy confines of the shop. We talked for a long time, about my mother, about her new job, about the quiet, fragile peace that had settled over the Vance family. It was comforting to talk to her, to have a friend who understood the long, complicated journey that had brought me to this place. When I got home, the small house was quiet. Eleanor was in the kitchen, washing the dinner dishes. Julian was still nowhere to be seen. I found Richard sitting on the back porch, a solitary figure silhouetted against the deepening twilight. He was smoking a cigarette, the glowing red tip a small beacon in the darkness, the smoke curling around his head like a ghostly halo. Eleanor came out and stood beside him, her arms wrapped around herself as if against a sudden chill. "You're out here every night," she said, her voice soft, devoid of its usual sharp edge. Sitting in the dark, thinking, "What's the use, Richard? The past is the past." He took a long, slow drag from his cigarette, the smoke momentarily obscuring his face. "Is it, Eleanor?" he said, his voice a low, gravelly murmur. "I came here with you. I accepted this new life. I forgave you. But you're the one who can't let it go. Because I see the sadness in your eyes," she said, her voice rising with a familiar, defensive heat. "You're still thinking of her, aren't you?" He didn't deny it. He just sighed, a sound heavy with the weight of years. This whole disaster, this fall from grace, it makes me wonder, is this karma, Eleanor? Is this the universe finally balancing the scales? He looked out at the dark, swirling water of the river. Laura, she did nothing wrong. Her only crime was that she couldn't give me a son. And I was a coward. I wanted an heir so badly that I betrayed her. With you. He turned to look at her, his eyes filled with a pain that was as fresh as if it had happened yesterday. Do you remember the day she found out? The look on her face? She was shattered, but she didn't scream, she didn't rage, she just signed the divorce papers. She walked away, and she let us have our happiness. His voice dropped to a choked whisper. A year later, when you were in the hospital giving birth to Julian, I saw her. She was there too. In the maternity ward, she was holding a baby boy. Her son, my son. I found out that day. When she left me, she was already 2 months pregnant. I begged her to come back. I told her I would leave you, that I would make it right. But she refused. She said she couldn't build her happiness on the ruins of another woman's. She was too good, too decent. She chose to suffer alone, to protect you, and I let her go. I let her and my son walk out of my life, and I never saw them again. I am a terrible man, Eleanor, a weak, terrible man, and this, all of this, is my punishment. Eleanor was crying now, silent tears tracking paths down her wrinkled cheeks. It was over 20 years ago, she whispered, her voice thick with a guilt that had been festering for 2 decades. I know I was wrong. I know I hurt her, but you bringing it up over and over, it hurts me, Richard. I was the other woman. I lived with the shame, the guilt. Do you think my life has been easy? He took one last drag from his cigarette and flicked the butt into the darkness. No, he said, his voice flat. I don't. We made our choices, Eleanor, and we built our lives on a foundation of secrets and lies. And the son we had, the son we sacrificed everything for, he became a monster, an entitled, arrogant monster who has brought nothing but pain to this family. Don't say that, Richard, she pleaded. He's changing. I see it. He's working hard. Is he? Richard said, a bitter, skeptical note in his voice. Or is he just out there, gambling, drinking, wasting what little we have left? I don't trust him, Eleanor. I don't think he's capable of change. Please, she whispered, clasping her hands together as if in prayer. Don't say that. Please, God, let him be okay. As if on cue, a figure came running towards the house, a frantic, desperate silhouette against the streetlights. It was me. I burst onto the porch, gasping for breath, my face streaked with tears. Dad, Mom, I cried out, my voice a ragged, panicked sob. It's Julian. You have to come. To the hospital. There's been an accident. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Eleanor let out a small, strangled cry and swayed on her feet, looking like she was about to faint. Richard, his face a mask of ashen horror, grabbed her, holding her steady. Lucy, calm down, he said, his voice surprisingly firm, though his hands were trembling. Tell us what happened? I took a deep, shuddering breath, the images of the past hour flashing behind my eyes like a horrific slideshow. My clothes were stained with his blood. I was with Maria, I stammered, the words tumbling out in a frantic rush. We were walking home. We were standing outside her building, talking, and then we heard it, a terrible crash, screaming. We ran to see. There was a crowd. They said a driver had swerved to avoid an old woman who stepped into the street, and he hit a truck. The truck just drove away. The old woman was fine, but the driver, he was just lying there, in the road. My voice broke, and I had to stop, my body shaking with a fresh wave of sobs. I I just wanted to see if I could help, but when I got closer, I saw the car. It was his car. And then I saw him. He was just lying there. There was so much blood, Dad. So much blood. The ambulance came. Maria and I went with him. He's in the emergency room now. Maria is staying with him. I came to get you. We have to go. Now. The rest was a blur. We didn't even lock the door. We just ran. A frantic, terrified trio through the dark city streets, our footsteps echoing in the silence. We found Maria pacing back and forth in the sterile, brightly lit hallway of the emergency room, her face a mask of worry. Eleanor rushed to her, grabbing her arm, her voice a high, thin wail. Maria, my son, is he okay? What did the doctor say? Maria shook her head, her eyes filled with a deep, sorrowful pity. They took him into surgery right away, the doctor said. He has bleeding in his brain. They're trying to stop it now. They told me you need to go to the admissions desk to pay the deposit. Eleanor stared at her, her face slack with a dawning, terrible realization. The money, the surgery, things they no longer had. She stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth, a low, guttural moan escaping her lips. She was about to collapse when Richard caught her, his own face a mask of grim, helpless despair. I just stood there, my back against the cold wall, my gaze fixed on the closed doors of the operating room. Behind those doors, the man who was my husband, the man I had begun to feel a fragile, complicated affection for, was fighting for his life. And in that moment, all the anger, all the resentment, all the hurt he had ever caused me, it all melted away, replaced by a single, overwhelming emotion, a cold, stark terror. I prayed. I, who had not prayed in years, I prayed. I prayed for the doors to open. I prayed for a doctor to walk out and tell us he was okay. I prayed for a miracle. And as I stood there, lost in a fog of fear and desperation, Richard was trying to figure out how to navigate the bureaucratic nightmare of a hospital with no insurance and no money. He was about to walk to the admissions desk, to beg, to plead, to offer them the last of his worldly possessions, when the operating room doors swung open. A doctor in blue scrubs walked out, pulling the surgical mask from his face. He looked tired, his expression grave. He scanned the hallway, his eyes searching for the family of the patient, and then his gaze landed on me, and my world, which was already tilting on its axis, spun completely out of control because the doctor was Matthew. He saw me, and for a fraction of a second, the professional mask slipped. I saw a flicker of shock, of a deep, personal pain in his eyes. He hadn't just operated on a stranger. He had just held the life of my husband in his hands. Lucy, he said, his voice a low, incredulous whisper. What are you doing here? I just stared at him, my mind unable to process the sheer, cruel irony of the situation. Before I could answer, Eleanor, desperate for news, rushed forward, grabbing his arm. Doctor, please, she begged, her voice a high, thin wail. My son, how is my son? Matthew's gaze shifted from me to her, and the professional mask snapped back into place. But he was still looking at me when he spoke. I nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement. Yes, my eyes said. The man on the table. He's my husband. A shadow passed over his face, a fleeting expression of a pain so deep it was almost unbearable to witness. He had come back to the States. He had finished his residency. He was now a surgeon at one of the city's top hospitals. And his first act, in this new life, was to save the man who had taken me from him. "He's your husband?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral, but his eyes were screaming 1,000 questions. "Yes," I whispered. "How is he, Matthew? Is he going to be okay?" The use of his first name, the raw, undisguised plea in my voice, it seemed to pierce through his professional composure. He took a deep breath, his gaze softening with a familiar, aching tenderness. "The surgery went well," he said, his voice a low, reassuring murmur meant only for me. "We stopped the bleeding, but the impact was severe. There's significant trauma to the brain. We won't know the full extent of the damage until he wakes up." The rest of the family, who had been watching this exchange with a mixture of confusion and dawning realization, finally seemed to understand. He wasn't just a doctor, he was the Matthew, the boy from my past. Eleanor stared at him, her face slack with a horrified recognition. This was the man she had screamed at in the street, the man she had accused of being my lover. "You," she stammered, her face flushing with a deep, mortified shame. "You're the doctor from the other night. I am so sorry. I didn't realize. Please, forgive me. And please, save my son. I will be in your debt for the rest of my life." Matthew gave her a small, tight smile, his eyes cold. "Saving lives is my job, ma'am," he said, his voice clipped and professional. "You don't owe me anything." He turned to the rest of them. "The nurses will be moving him to the recovery room shortly. You can see him then. I have to go." He started to walk away, his white coat whispering against the sterile linoleum floor. As he passed me, he paused for a fraction of a second. His eyes met mine, and in their depths, I saw a world of pain, of love, of regret. Then he was gone, a solitary figure disappearing down the long, empty corridor. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this was not a coincidence. This was fate, a cruel, twisted, and inescapable fate that had bound the three of us together in a knot of love and loss and tragedy. Hours later, they moved Julian to a private room. Maria, bless her heart, had stayed, a quiet, comforting presence in the storm of our grief. But now, seeing that we were settled, she said her goodbyes and slipped away into the night. We sat in the dimly lit room, a silent, terrified vigil around his bed. He looked so small, so fragile, his head wrapped in a thick white bandage, his face pale and still against the pristine white of the pillow. The only sound in the room was the steady, rhythmic beep of the heart monitor, a fragile thread of hope in the suffocating silence. And then his eyelids fluttered. He was waking up. We all leaned in, a collective breath held in our chests. "Julian," I whispered, my hand reaching for his. "Can you hear me?" "Son," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. "Do you know who we are?" He groaned, his eyes slowly opening. He looked at us, at each of our faces, and a small, weak smile touched his lips. He recognized us. The relief was so overwhelming, it was a physical thing. I felt the tears I had been holding back for hours finally begin to fall. But then, the smile faded. A look of confusion, of a dawning, terrible fear, crossed his face. He sat up, his movements clumsy and uncoordinated. He blinked, hard, and then blinked again, as if trying to clear a fog from his eyes. What's wrong?" he said, his voice a panicked whisper. I can't see. Everything is dark, blurry." He started to laugh, a high, hysterical sound that was more terrifying than any scream. "I'm blind," he said, the words a raw, ragged tear in the silence. "Oh, my God, I'm blind." You can all go home now. I'm useless, a freak. He buried his face in his hands, his body shaking with ragged, uncontrollable sobs. The beeping of the heart monitor became frantic, a high-pitched alarm that mirrored the panic in our own hearts. Richard, his face a mask of ashen despair, reached for his son. "Julian, no," he said, his voice choked with a pain so deep it was almost unbearable to witness. "Don't say that. We'll get you the best doctors. We'll find a way to fix this. You're going to be okay." But Julian wasn't listening. He was lost in his own private hell, a world of darkness and despair. "Just leave me alone," he sobbed. "Just let me be." I looked at his parents, at their shattered, heartbroken faces. I knew they couldn't handle this. I knew I had to be the strong one. "Dad, Mom," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "It's late. You should go home and get some rest. He's just in shock. I'll stay with him. I can handle it." They looked at me, their eyes filled with a desperate, grateful relief. Richard nodded, his hand clutching his wife's. "You're a good girl, Lucy," he whispered. "We'll be back first thing in the morning." They left, their footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. And then it was just the two of us, alone in the quiet, sterile room. I sat down on the edge of his bed, my heart aching with a love so fierce, so protective, it surprised me. He had been a monster. He had been a coward. But now he was just a scared, broken man, and he was my husband. "Go away, Lucy," he mumbled from behind his hands. "You don't have to stay here and watch the freak show." I didn't say anything. I just reached out and took his hand. It was cold and limp in mine. "I'm your wife, Julian," I said softly. "I'm not going anywhere. But I'm a cripple," he whispered, his voice a raw, ragged thing. "I'm blind. I'm useless. You don't need a husband like me." "Shh," I said, squeezing his hand. "Don't talk like that." I leaned in closer, my other hand gently stroking his hair. I put my arms around him, pulling him into a gentle embrace. "No matter what happens," I whispered into his ear, "I will be here. I will take care of you. We are in this together." He didn't pull away. He just leaned into me, his body trembling, and he let me hold him. He was like a child, seeking comfort in the darkness. And as I held him, a strange, profound realization washed over me. For a year, I had been his wife in name only. But now, in this moment of shared tragedy, of raw, unvarnished vulnerability, I was finally, truly, his wife. The door creaked open, and Matthew walked in, a chart in his hand. He was with a nurse. He stopped dead when he saw us, his face a mask of unreadable emotion. He cleared his throat, his voice all business. "I need to examine the patient." I gently pulled away from Julian, my face flushing with a mixture of embarrassment and a strange, defiant pride. I helped Julian lie back against the pillows, my movements gentle and sure. Matthew conducted his examination in a cool, professional silence. The nurse hooked up a new IV bag and then discreetly left the room. And then it was just the three of us again, a triangle of past, present, and an uncertain future. Matthew sat down, his gaze fixed on the chart in his hands, but I knew he was seeing me. "The trauma from the impact has caused swelling that is pressing on your optic nerves," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "It's a temporary condition, but we'll need to do another surgery. We have a top ophthalmologist on staff. He can repair the damage." He looked up, his eyes meeting mine. "I'll cover the costs." Julian, who had been lying silently, his face a mask of despair, suddenly spoke up. "Why?" he asked, his voice a low, suspicious growl. Is this some kind of charity? Or is there another reason you're being so generous? Matthew didn't flinch. He put the chart down and looked Julian directly in the eye, man to man. I'm doing it for Lucy, he said, his voice quiet but firm. I'm doing it because I love her, and I want her to be happy. The words hung in the air, a stark, brutal confession. Julian's hand, which I had been holding, was snatched away as if he'd been burned. A low, bitter laugh escaped his lips. So it's true, he said, his voice dripping with a venomous sarcasm. You two are lovers. I heard her say she had a first love. I just never imagined it would be a doctor, a real-life hero. We were, Matthew said, his voice unwavering. A long time ago, before she married you. Now, we are just friends. And as her friend, I have watched, from a distance, as you have made her miserable. I have wanted, more than anything, to take her away from you, but she wouldn't leave, because, for some reason I will never understand, she has chosen you. So now, I will help you. I will give you back your sight, and in return, I expect you to spend the rest of your life making her happy. You will take care of her in a way that I no longer can. The raw, selfless nobility of his words was a punch to the gut. I looked at him, my heart aching with a love and a gratitude so profound it was almost unbearable. But Julian didn't see nobility. He saw pity. He saw a rival, a better man, offering him a handout. He laughed again, a harsh, ugly sound. What a beautiful love story, he sneered. Well, you can have her. I don't want your pity. I don't want your charity. And I certainly don't want your help. Now get out, both of you. Leave me alone. Julian, stop it, I cried out, my voice sharp with a mixture of anger and despair. How can you say that? How do you want me to say it? Lucy. He shot back, his voice a raw, ragged thing. Do you want me to thank him? Do you want me to praise your noble, selfless love? I'm sorry. I just don't have it in me right now. Matthew stood up, his face a mask of weary resignation. I'm not going to argue with you, he said, his voice calm and steady. You're in shock. You're not thinking clearly. But I will tell you this, as your doctor. We will schedule the surgery for Monday. If we wait any longer, the damage to your optic nerves could become permanent. You could be blind for the rest of your life. He turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. The choice is yours, he said, his voice quiet but firm. And then he was gone. The moment the door closed, Julian exploded. He thrashed in the bed, punching the pillows, his face contorted with a rage that was born of pure, helpless despair. No, he screamed. I'm not doing it. I don't have the money, and I don't want his help. He's just doing this to humiliate me, to show me what a pathetic failure I am. And you're in on it, aren't you? This is all just a big, elaborate plan to get rid of me, so you two can be together. He was raving, his words a torrent of paranoid accusations. And then, with a final, guttural cry, he collapsed back against the pillows, unconscious. He had passed out from the sheer, overwhelming force of his own despair. I just sat there, in the silent, sterile room, my body trembling, my heart shattered into a million pieces. The man I loved was offering me a way out, a path to a life of happiness and peace. And the man I was married to, the man I had chosen, was determined to drag us both down into the darkness with him. And I was trapped. I was trapped between two worlds, between two men, between two loves, and I didn't know how to escape. The next morning, Richard and Eleanor arrived early, their faces etched with a sleepless, worried exhaustion. I hadn't slept either. I had spent the night in the uncomfortable visitor's chair, watching Julian's still, silent form, my heart a heavy, aching knot in my chest. He had woken up briefly around dawn, but he hadn't spoken. He had just turned his face to the wall, a silent, stubborn rejection of me, of the world, of his own life. Seeing the dark circles under my eyes, the weary slump of my shoulders, Eleanor's face softened with a genuine, maternal concern that was still new and surprising to me. "Lucy, my child," she said, her voice a soft, gentle murmur. "You look exhausted. Go home, take a shower, get some rest. We'll stay with him." I was too tired to argue. I just nodded, a silent, grateful acceptance of her kindness. When I was gone, they convinced Julian to let them take him outside, to the hospital garden, for some fresh air. He went with them, his movements slow and shuffling, his face a mask of sullen, resentful despair. They sat on a bench, surrounded by the cheerful, indifferent beauty of the blooming rose bushes. They tried to talk to him, to reason with him, but he just sat there, a silent, brooding statue of self-pity. And then a woman walked past. She was elegant, dressed in a simple but expensive-looking linen dress, her hair a stylish silver bob. She was carrying a designer handbag and a thermal lunch tote. She walked with a brisk, confident stride, but as she passed their bench, she slowed and then stopped. She pushed her dark sunglasses up onto her head, and her eyes, sharp and intelligent, widened with a look of stunned, incredulous recognition. "Richard," she said, her voice a low, musical murmur that was somehow both familiar and strange. "Richard Vance? Is that you?" Richard and Eleanor looked up, and the world seemed to stop. Richard's face went slack with a shock so profound, it was as if he had seen a ghost. "Laura?" he whispered, the name a fragile, breathless thing. "My God, is it really you?" Eleanor flinched as if she had been struck. She looked at this woman, this ghost from her husband's past, and a wave of shame so powerful it was almost nauseating washed over her. "Laura," she said, her voice a small, choked whisper. I am so sorry for everything." Laura looked at them, at the two people who had caused her the most profound pain of her life. She saw their worn, tired faces, their simple, inexpensive clothes. She saw the broken, bandaged young man sitting between them, and all the anger, all the bitterness, all the resentment she had carried for over 20 years, it all just melted away. "It was a long time ago," she said, her voice gentle, devoid of any hint of accusation. "There's no need for apologies. I chose my path, and you chose yours." She turned her kind, intelligent eyes to Julian. "And this young man, he must be—" "This is Julian," Eleanor said, her voice thick with unshed tears. "Our son, Julian," she said, her voice warm. "I am Laura. I am an old friend of your father's." She looked at his bandaged head, his vacant, unfocused eyes, and her face softened with a genuine, compassionate concern. "What happened to you, son? You're hurt." Richard, his voice a low, ragged murmur, told her everything. He told her about their fall from grace, about the loss of their fortune, about Julian's accident, about the darkness that had stolen his sight. He told her it was karma, a divine punishment for his past sins. Laura listened, her expression unreadable. When he was finished, she just sighed, a sound of profound, weary sadness. "Stop it, Richard," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Stop blaming yourself. Life is messy. We make mistakes. We hurt each other. All we can do is try to be better." She looked at Julian, a new, determined light in her eyes. "My son, he's a doctor here. a surgeon. Let me talk to him. We'll find a way to help your boy." Just as she said his name, he appeared. Matthew and I were walking towards them from across the garden. I had just come back to the hospital, and he had met me in the lobby, telling me he knew where to find them. "Mom?" he said, a look of surprise on his face. "What are you doing here so early?" "Matthew, my love," she said, her face lighting up with a radiant maternal pride. "I brought you lunch." She turned, her gaze moving from Richard to her son, and her voice, when she spoke again, was thick with an emotion so profound, it seemed to shake the very air around them. "Matthew," she said, her voice trembling, "this man, this is Richard Vance. He is your biological father." The world tilted on its axis. Richard stared at Matthew, at this handsome, confident, brilliant young man, and saw the ghost of his own youth in the line of his jaw, the set of his eyes. And Matthew looked at Richard, the man his mother had told him about in quiet, sad whispers, the man who was a part of him, a part he had never known. And without a word, he stepped forward, and he hugged him. Two strangers, two ghosts from a shared, broken past, clinging to each other in the middle of a hospital garden, their bodies shaking with the force of 20 years of unspoken words. The two women, Eleanor and Laura, watched, their faces wet with tears, and I stood a little apart, a silent witness to this reunion of a family I had, in my own strange, complicated way, helped to bring back together. But Julian didn't see a reunion. He saw a nightmare. He heard his mother call this woman Laura. He saw this man, Matthew, this doctor, this rival, embrace his father, and his world, which was already a landscape of darkness and despair, shattered into a million pieces. He stumbled to his feet, a low, strangled cry ripping from his throat. "No," he whispered, the word a raw, ragged thing. "This can't be happening. My life is a joke." And then he ran, blindly, recklessly. He ran towards the sound of the street, towards the roar of the traffic, a man determined to escape a reality that was too painful to bear. "Julian," I screamed, my heart seizing with a new, terrible fear. I ran after him, my own footsteps a frantic, desperate echo of his. The rest of the family was frozen for a moment, stunned by his sudden flight. Then, they too began to run. But I was the closest. I reached him just as he stumbled off the curb, into the path of an oncoming city bus. I grabbed his arm, pulling him back with a strength born of pure, adrenaline-fueled terror. He fought me, his body trembling, his voice a high, thin wail of despair. "Let me go, Lucy. I want to die. I have nothing left to live for." Just then, Matthew reached us. He grabbed Julian's other arm, his grip like iron. "Stop it, Julian," he commanded, his voice a sharp, authoritative crack that cut through the fog of Julian's hysteria. "You are a man. Act like one. Do you have any idea how much you're hurting her? She has been through hell for you. And if you truly want to die, she is the one who will have to live with that pain for the rest of her life. Is that what you want?" His words, so stark, so brutal, so true, they seemed to pierce through the armor of Julian's self-pity. He stopped struggling. He just stood there, his body trembling, his head bowed. He couldn't see me, not really, but he could feel my hands clutching his arm, my tears falling onto his shirt. And for the first time, he understood. He understood the depth of my love, the extent of my sacrifice. He sank to the ground, his body shaking with ragged, uncontrollable sobs. "I was wrong," he cried, the words a raw, ragged tear in his throat. I was so wrong. Matthew knelt beside him, his hand a comforting weight on his shoulder. It's okay to be scared, Julian, he said, his voice gentle. But you're not alone. You have a family that loves you. You have a wife who would die for you, and you have a brother. He looked up then, his eyes, though blurred and unfocused, searching for Matthew's face. A brother? He whispered. Yes, Matthew said, his voice firm and steady. And as your big brother, I'm telling you, you are going to have that surgery. You are going to get your sight back, and you are going to spend the rest of your life making it up to her. Do you understand me? Julian looked from the blurry shape of his newfound brother to the shadowy outline of me, his wife, who was still kneeling beside him, her hand a small, warm anchor in the stormy sea of his despair. And he nodded. Yes, he whispered, his voice thick with a new, fragile hope. I understand. And in that moment, surrounded by the wreckage of their past and the uncertainty of their future, two families, broken and scattered, began the slow, painful process of becoming one. The surgery was scheduled for the following Monday. The days leading up to it were a strange, surreal dream. The two families, once separated by a chasm of secrets and lies, were now a constant, comforting presence in the sterile, impersonal world of the hospital. Laura and Eleanor, the two women who had once been bitter rivals, now sat side by side, their shared love for their sons a fragile bridge between them. And Richard, a man who had been a ghost in his own life for 20 years, was finally, truly, a father. He and Matthew would talk for hours, their voices a low, steady murmur, 2 decades of lost time condensed into a few precious, stolen moments. And Julian and I, we were different. The anger, the resentment, the bitterness, it had all been burned away in the crucible of our shared tragedy. What was left was something new, something fragile, something infinitely precious. He would reach for my hand, his touch no longer a demand, but a question, and I would take it, my fingers lacing with his, a silent answer. He looked at me then, his unfocused eyes searching for my face. Lucy, he said, his voice a low, rough whisper. I'm sorry for everything. From now on, I promise I will never make you sad again. Tears welled in my eyes. I leaned in, my arms wrapping around him, my head resting on his chest. It's okay, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. Just get better. That's all I want. We'll start over. He held me tight, his hand stroking my hair. I love you, Lucy, he whispered into my ear, the words a raw, heartfelt confession. I pulled back, my hand gently touching his cheek. I love you too, Julian, I said, and the words, to my own surprise, were the absolute, unequivocal truth. I had fallen in love not with the arrogant, spoiled boy I had married, but with the broken, beautiful man he had become. On Monday morning, they wheeled him into the operating room. We all stood outside, a silent, terrified tribe, our hands clasped, our hearts united in a single, desperate prayer. Hours later, Matthew came out, his face tired but his eyes shining with a triumphant, relieved light. The surgery was a success, he said, and a collective, ragged sigh of relief swept through our small group. A month later, Julian came home. His eyes, once clouded with darkness, were now clear and bright, filled with a newfound light that had nothing to do with his restored vision. He was a changed man. The lazy, entitled boy was gone forever, replaced by a man who was quiet and kind and determined. Life found a new, more hopeful rhythm. Matthew, with his characteristic generosity, had an idea. "You can't all stay crammed in that little house," he said one evening. "And my mother, she's all alone in that big house in Havenwood, my father's old place. It's too much for her." And so a plan was formed. We would all move back to the small town where it had all begun. There was enough room for all of us in Laura's house. And my mother would be just a short walk down the road. Eleanor was hesitant at first, the shame of her past a heavy weight on her soul. But Laura, with her characteristic grace and forgiveness, would not hear of it. "We are a family now," she said, her voice firm. "And families belong together." And so we went. We packed up our small, rented house, the convenience store, my pharmacy, and we went home. Matthew, who had arranged a transfer to the larger regional hospital an hour's drive away, bought Julian a new, more reliable car. "You can start a taxi service," he said. "Drive people from Havenwood to the hospital, to the city. You'll be your own boss. You'll do well." And I would go back to work for Laura, but not as a waitress. She had a small, successful sewing and alterations business, and she needed a partner. "You have a good eye and a steady hand," she said. "We'll be a great team." And so our new life began. It was a simple life, a quiet life, but it was a life filled with a love so profound, so hard-won, that it felt like the most precious treasure in the world. That first night, in our new room, in our new home, I was exhausted. The long day of moving had taken its toll. I collapsed into bed, ready for a deep, dreamless sleep. But then, I felt Julian's arm slide around my waist, his body warm and solid against mine. "What's wrong?" I whispered into the darkness, my heart beginning to beat a little faster. "Can't you sleep?" He pulled me closer, his lips brushing against my ear. "No," he whispered, his voice a low, husky murmur. "I can't." He kissed me then, and it was not the clumsy, drunken fumbling of our wedding night. It was a kiss that was slow and deep and filled with a year's worth of unspoken words. It was a kiss of apology, of gratitude, of a love so profound, it took my breath away. "It's been over a year, Lucy," he whispered against my lips. "Are you really going to make me wait any longer?" I smiled into the darkness, my heart so full it felt like it was going to burst. I had waited a lifetime for this, for him, for this love. A year later, the phone rang. Julian was on his way home from a long day of driving, his taxi service a resounding success. He answered the hands-free call, a smile on his face. "Hey, you," he said. It was me, but my voice was not the cheerful, loving one he was used to. It was a thin, reedy thing, laced with pain. "Julian," I gasped, "you have to come home. Now, I think the baby is coming." He was home in 10 minutes, his car screeching to a halt in the driveway. He found me on the sofa, my face pale and beaded with sweat, my hands clutching my swollen belly. The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity, of shouted instructions, of a wild, terrifying, exhilarating ride to the hospital. And then, just as the sun was beginning to set, our son was born. A beautiful, healthy, 7-pound miracle, with his father's dark hair and my quiet, watchful eyes. They laid him in my arms, and I looked at his small, perfect face, and my heart, which I thought could not possibly hold any more love, expanded to a size I never knew was possible. Julian stood beside me, his hand on my shoulder, his face wet with tears. He leaned down and kissed me, a long, lingering kiss that was filled with all the love and all the wonder and all the gratitude in the world. And in that moment, as I lay there, with my beautiful son in my arms and my loving husband by my side. I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I was home. The journey had been long and hard and filled with a pain so profound it had almost broken me. But it had led me here, to this moment, to this love, to this family, and it had all, every last second of it, been worth it.